zone for DMU one. So that's what, that was a result of the comp plan. So I developed the,
Can I just interrupt you for 1 second, just the question?
Yeah.
So you're saying that the only difference between DMU one and DMU two was the elimination of the requirement for retail space on the ground floor?
and the
Setback.
setback, the 10-foot setback.
The 10-foot setback, which is in is the DMU one,
DMU two.
Has a 10.
There's no setbacks in DMU one,
so there's a 10-foot setback in the DMU two?
yes.
Because I'm just curious, so how is it that the building at the corner of Main and Midland does definitely not have a 10-foot setback off of
Main and Midland, that's, Main and,
Joe Logano's building?
no. How much time do you have?
Give me the 30-second synopsis.
30-second,
So was there variance or something given?
There was no variance. His property goes right up to, and this was before it became DMU two.
Okay,
Oh, it was-
in 2019, that's when the change was.
Right, and he put it
His
in,
project was before that,
project was before that. It didn't get off the ground, but it was before that.
but he doesn't have retail on the ground floor either, so
He doesn't have retail either.
so that's why I thought it was under the rule of DMU two, because
The main problem with that is that he refused to move his site 10 feet. He said that he owned all the property there and he wasn't going to change that. And I kept saying to the board, make him change it. And he didn't change it because he was a very difficult applicant.
I won't characterize Joe, but I do know him. I've served with him on boards before.
And that's why you have
Strong
on the
person.
corner, you have this cockamamie thing about the corner is, we have a walkthrough, so you can get from one side of the street to the sidewalk to the other. And,
That's not ADA compliant, that corner.
okay, what is it?
All right, so putting that building aside is an anomaly.
Right.
The idea was that there, in DMU one, there's a, what kind of setback?
In DMU one, there's no setbacks.
There's no setback.
It's very much. a-
DMU two is supposed to have a 10-foot side setback, but you don't have to put retail space in. Okay.
You're not allowed to put retail space.
You, at DMU one downtown,
You have to.
you have to, DMU two, up, if they wanted to, they could, but they're not required to.
Okay, all right, so, and what was the impetus for the creation of the zone? And just to give us the history, but why did they create this special district?
Because again, we had, the DMU up on Upper Main Street was really not really downtown zone. There was no retail, component there. There's no, activity, whatever. And, so that was the main thing that why we made it DMU two, because it's out of the downtown area
Okay,
and it really wasn't an urban environment. And that's why we just made that one change.
okay, but there were other areas that are DMU two as well, other areas outside the upper Main.
Right, but they're, off the beaten track. They're on Franklin or they're, off on,
Yeah, I see, they're not on
This
Main,
is
they're
the-
lower Main, they're
right,
over by,
New Street.
yeah.
New Street, Morgan, Jackson, I mean.
So, and I guess this is an important point, I think, to recognize from what you're saying is that DMU one or DMU two, the building that I think has caused a lot of the concern among the residents, which is the building in the corner of Main and Midland, that's not facially compliant with either zone. Okay,
That's what I would say.
so in other words, it's not so much as the zoning issue as much as it was a particular project issue. Okay, well, we'll talk about that some other time. You can give me the longer version when we're not pressed for time, and I'll hear all about it. I'm curious about it.
Yeah.
All right, so now we're looking at DMU two and whether there are changes that we could make to it, and what are the changes? Give us a summary of what the changes
Oh,
would you
okay.
recommend.
I mean, first of all, I'd just like to preface
Sure.
it by saying that on Upper Main Street, there's really only, most of the development had been on the south side of Upper Main Street. And there's only one large property left undeveloped up there, or has the potential for development. Everything else has been essentially developed out. And that one is, Lazar V, 267 Main Street. It's right down from, Gateway Plaza. And that's a, 24,800 square foot property. It's just been sold. We don't know what's gonna happen there.
There's already was sold,
That's what I've been told.
the whole property. It's an
Yeah, the whole property.
extends to,
This is a 24,000 square foot property, which would have the same number of, units as Gateway, would be 33 that were built out. Now, they have 4 existing residential units there now.
in the back.
Yeah,
And you're saying that's the largest existing parcel, but there are obviously other multiple parcels that could be, combined if somebody were to do that.
the only ones that could be, combined would be at possibly for townhouses, is for the ones next to the, Mexican store at the corner. You're right. And there's 3, I think, 2-family homes. And it really wouldn't make any sense unless you actually combine all those and you made into some townhouses. But that's,
Or an apartment.
well, that's hard to,
Well,
possibly you could do it, but it's,
Well, I'm just saying, you're saying that's the only parcel left? I mean, I'm looking now.
on
at
the south side.
On the south side, okay, the south side, yeah. Okay.
And the other one that is, it's not really potential, but Travis, they've been around for 120 years. It seems like they're going anywhere, but that's the corner.
They sell monuments, they sell,
I know.
business is always constant, we just sell monuments.
It's very good. And on the other side, on the north side, you have Montclair at the corner of Midland and Main. You had another property right north of that. And that was proposed for some loft-style apartments a couple of years ago. And they didn't do anything with it. And they actually rehabbed it for commercial space, and they have long-term commercial leases there.
the bedroom place.
Right.
Yeah, the back room, I'm looking at, I have it up on my screen if you want to. Look over my shoulder.
And it's decked over the brook in the back. Then you have, the only other one that's there that, you have the firehouse, you've got, the one that's 292 Main Street is the office building. It's right next to the commercial property on the corner.
And there's a dry cleaner there.
Well, there's nothing there now. Maybe it is, but it's an office building. And again, St. John's Deliverance owned it. And that's essentially been sold to. And I think somebody may want to do like an adaptive reuse there with building something on top of it.
But there's no depth to it.
No, it's a fence in the back, yeah, it
DPW.
is. Yeah, right. And something like that, you'd be able to do maybe 11 units at the most.
All right, so you're saying that there are still some developable parcels there
Right,
that we might want to adjust the zoning for.
yes,
I think it's interesting that the concern is largely about the kind of building that was built in Midland and Maine, but that's not really in conformance with the zoning that exists now anyway. So tell me what are the changes you would recommend? Let's go.
well, and again, this would be essentially up in the, Upper Main Street. When I did this, 6 years ago, the board at that point said, we were concerned about a canyon type of, and the thing is, there were a lot more vacant or undeveloped properties there 6 years ago, but, that's been,
We had 3 big projects go up there since then.
right. So I thought that we could do something like, increase your setback to 15 feet. It could be a building setback, so very similar to what you do in the, WF zone. You could do a 10-foot setback for the building, starting at, like 32 on the top floor. So that could set back too. The, provide frontage requirement 75 feet to force assemblage of properties.
Come again?
Say again?
Do a, have a lot, frontage of 75 feet, which would encourage people to merge their properties.
In other words, a minimum of 75 feet or a maximum?
Minimum.
Minimum, okay.
And then
Wouldn't
there's,
that, I mean, that's encouraging larger, what it does is it prevents somebody from building a sliver, a big building on a small lot.
right, and it also, allows more flexibility in terms of design and whatever on the property. The, and then, somebody slipped this in on me, but consider accepting cannabis retail in the DMU2.
Consider accepting,
Cannabis retail in the
What kind of retail?
DMU2.
oh,
Marijuana.
cannabis retail, oh, the
Cannabis
cannabis, yeah. Well, yeah, it wasn't, the cannabis is.
But we
separate.
never put it there. We always put it just on 59 and in the downtown, the DMU1.
But there's a limitation for cannabis, because
There's a
of proximity to the
limitation.
church.
There's a limitation of 200 feet away from the house of worship, 500 feet from the school. And you can't, if you have another retail outlet, it has to be at least 1,000 square feet away from.
It's actually for a village our size, it's 2,000 feet, but that's a temporary.
Oh,
restriction.
yes, you're right.
It's a temporary
1,000
restriction.
for,
The 2,000 foot from another location is just during the rollout. That will eventually go away. They will be allowed to be next to each other theoretically.
But right now
But
they
the
don't.
school and the church, those are written into the statute, so those aren't
Right,
gonna
and
change.
that's essentially what they do with the liquors are.
Yeah, so here's the thing about the, well, the cannabis is a simpler issue, so let's just kind of resolve that for a second, is that that's one of the things I was here for. I haven't been here that long, but I was here for the cannabis discussion. And we never specifically, as far as I can recall, were you here when we did that, or was that afterwards? And were you here when we did it? You were here, you were, but these two were not. You might have been out there for it. Is we never specifically said we're gonna restrict it. We don't want it to be in DMU2. We just never, we never came up.
We put it.
We're talking about them
downtown.
being in the downtown.
Put it in downtown and,
There was no requirement that DMU2 had to have retail, so for that reason.
For that reason, it was not, although, I mean, they can have retail, so that theoretically somebody could, for one of the retail shops, could have turned it into a cannabis location.
I actually just thought that it might be better off to see exactly how it goes before you make any other decision.
Any other additional cannabis.
Yeah.
It's just weird that we allow it in downtown and we allow it in the commercial corridor, but you can't have it between the downtown and the commercial corridor. It's just, it's a little.
You just don't have the traffic and the other stuff.
Just rename it High Street and then you'll have a lot.
It's South England though.
See, I avoided making the monument joke about people are dying to get one, and then you go ahead and make the High Street joke. I want you to appreciate it, I held back on it, at least till now. All right, so you're putting the cannabis thing aside for a second, because I don't think that's not gonna be material. I think what people are really concerned about is that we put in some zoning restrictions that will prevent the canyon effect getting any worse than it is right now. And so you're saying that we could kind of reduce, at least for future purposes, we could reduce it by requiring that they have to have in order to, so you're requiring the frontage, you said 70 something feet, 72 feet?
75 feet.
75 feet, so that would be a requirement in order to do what?
It would be a lot requirement. You need to have the 75 feet to be able to build
To be able to build anything
anything.
as opposed to, so you couldn't knock down a building and put up something if you only, what if someone wants to knock down one of the,
They'll have to
Small lots and-
they'll have to go through a variance or something.
I mean, is there a way to condition and to say you can only go up a certain height if you have 75 feet? Because that would seem to make more
Well,
sense.
actually, right now it's 50 feet, so you're increasing your frontage.
I'm just saying, like, if somebody wants to knock down, let's say, I'm just picking up a random building, like one of these old retail stores. And they want to build, instead of moving their business into it, they want to knock it down and build a newer retail store in. They wouldn't be able to do that if we had a 75-foot minimum.
Well, that's really for the, it's going to be for multifamily.
So multi-family 75 foot, retail, keep it at 50 feet.
Keep it at the 50.
Yeah, I could see that.
So if somebody wants to knock down one of the existing houses there and build a new house,
Again, I think on the south side, you've got one property. On the north side, you may have several properties over time. But there's something,
I'm trying to think through the corners on this that we don't necessarily want. I mean, what we're really trying to do is prevent someone from building a big, tall building right on the sidewalk.
well, still 40 feet, and we're talking about it's 40 feet height. And you're going to, like, for example, Diana Place is actually 14 feet. They just made
The setback is 14 feet, yeah, I did notice that.
But again, it's a matter of, your setback, the building setback would be in the upper floor that would set it back from the street. And if you're, and you have another 5 feet or so, it would be more similar to, Diana.
Gateway lofts.
So it'd be almost like a terraced setback where it's
Exactly.
more of a setback the higher you go.
Or they have landscaping, like the gateway.
Well,
lofts.
that's exactly right, because if you have another 5 feet, now you can actually put in landscaping, because you have, like, you should really go in like 3 or 4 feet, and you can put that in right there.
I think that's what we need to achieve, a more aesthetic look. And undo the canyon effect as much, I mean, some of it is
Right.
there.
It's the canyon effect is really just to be honest, it's really just the one building. Diana Place is a little red for my taste. It's a lot of red, but it's not quite on top of you the way that the Montclair is.
Because it really is,
Comes to the bottom.
it's like 14, almost 15 feet.
So so these buildings, the Montclair and the Diana Place, how tall are they?
40 feet.
They're 40 feet. So the height is not they're not like 80
It's the
feet tall.
proximity to the road and to the sidewalk.
But they're 40 feet, but they got permission to do 4 stories instead of 3 stories.
That was Diana Place.
That was Diana Place, right, and also Montclair,
So Montclair 4 stories?
right?
Montclair looks like it's 3 stories, but there could be something, I'm saying 3
Oh,
stories.
yeah, no, that's great. Yeah. I think.
And Diana Place got a,
I'm sorry, the gateway lofts are 4.
Yeah, then
it
they're,
depends on how you measure it.
yeah, the top of the hill, it's only 3 stories. If you go down the hill, it's 4 from the lower, because they're right on the hill.
So there's an average grade plane, whatever that the building department looks at.
Well, I would like to see 40 feet, but only 3 stories.
Yeah, but for
Is that what's allowed
That's
now?
what,
3 stories.
That's what it is now.
Yeah.
So Diana Place, that was approved before the zone change?
no, it was, they got a variance. So they went back,
They got a special permit. They got a special permit because of affordable housing, right?
No,
no, it was just a site plan. It's a site plan, and they actually went to the zoning board to get a variance for the 4 feet. Now that 4 feet just goes like this, and then it becomes 3 feet. So,
The 4 feet, which 4 feet from what?
in the front.
So they're only set back 4 feet in Diana Place?
No, they're set back 4 stories in the front and 3 stories in the back.
So the setback is about 14 feet on Diana Place.
Okay, the setback, I'm
that's
just
all.
looking at it right now.
That
pretty wide
was
side.
a zoning board decision.
Okay, Yeah, I see. So it's 4 stories and it's 3 stories in the back. All right, so, and you're suggesting with regard, so you're, the two things that we talked about besides cannabis, the two things we talked about is increasing the setback from what to what?
From 10 feet to 15.
All right, 5 more feet on the setback, and you're also saying that we should limit to, you have to have 70 feet of frontage to be able to build a multifamily,
75.
75 feet to build a multifamily.
And 50 for businesses.
And what?
50 for retail, 50 for retail, 70 for,
That would be the same.
actually remains the same, but 70 if you want to build a.
75.
75, I'm sorry. I keep saying
I mean, you know.
I should write that down.
Tip us out by.
I have the memo, but the memo's long, so I can't find the place in the memo. All right, 75 and 15. I got that right. 15, I got it, 15 and 75.
50.
Oh, I'm 15 is the setback instead of 10. I'm talking about the setback, not the retail.
It's not that long.
Because that's not changing. What are our thoughts?
What about density? Now, density and FAR was changed, correct? In
Density was the
2019.
same as what it was under the DMU
One,
one.
right?
In other words, it's 50 units to the acre.
But as opposed to DMU one, there's no ability to apply for a special permit for increased density because of affordable housing. DMU one, you could apply for either,
DMU one you need to have public benefits. So affordable housing is one of them.
DMU one,
Right.
anything in excess of the 10%.
It's
Anything
in excess of the 40 feet.
What's that?
It's in excess of the height.
No, the DMU one is very clear. It says that if you have in excess of the section 120
Here,
of the 10%.
Up to affordable housing, affordable units, you're saying.
Affordable units, right?
So if they give more affordable units, they get what?
They could, the village board can look at that kindly in terms of request for a special permit.
I thought there
Either go
was,
higher or denser.
I thought there was also something where they could go up higher.
Yeah, that's what you just said.
Yeah.
They go higher, they go denser if they give more than the 10 units.
But it's more than just affordable housing, so there's some public benefits, is doing fountains, doing this or that,
There's a whole mix.
Yes,
There's a whole mix, but
and it's never
that's
been done,
not allowed in DMU two.
right?
No, so there's another difference between DMU two and DMU one, is that DMU two does not give the ability to add affordable units to get certain public benefits.
No, it just has the 10%.
Or get more height, to get more height.
Yeah. More height and more density for public,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Now, is there a reason why that was not included as part of the DMU two? Was that a,
I think that what Joe is talking about essentially is very much came out of the comp plan, and it was relative to downtown and having more activity downtown and more possibly open space and other kinds of things, but it's never been used.
no, it's never been taken advantage of because it's just too tight.
No, I think
In the
that,
downtown area,
yes, right.
right, but in DMU two, it was taken advantage of.
No, this is not available in DMU two.
No, no.
No, it was changed actually, because in 2019, a lot of these projects, Diana Place, for example, they had 10%, and there was in my opinion, a mistake by the planning board, is that they allowed additional density and additional 2 apartments because of that 10% affordable housing.
Well,
But that was actually
But-
nixed in the 2019.
but that's what you have, if you do a 10% on a project and you get two additional units, that's goes towards your density. So it's a give back to the an incentive to have the developer put in the affordable housing.
But that should not be, the 10% is a requirement.
Right.
It's not a.
They don't get anything for
option.
the 10%. They have to provide the 10% no matter what.
Right, but they got.
They have to do that, but also the village gives you the extra units.
That has to change.
Wait, it gives you extra units for the 10% or it gives you extra units if you go above
Yeah.
that?
No, it gives you, if you do 10%, the theory behind it was that they would get less feedback from a developer because it's going to cost them X amount of dollars to go up.
So that,
And that's why, look at the code, that's what it says.
but that's DMU one, that's not DMU two. So you're saying that should change, but that's not a DMU two change, it's a DMU one.
Yes, that's anywhere you have affordable
Affordable
housing.
housing.
So that you get the extra units for giving the 10%.
You get 10% and you get the extra units.
And that seems to be it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, if a developer was providing 15% or 20%, I could see that. But the village requires 10% affordable housing. There should be no bonus associated with that.
Well, there's a number of, when we all started this, it was very, antsy about how that was going to be received. And if anybody was actually going to, make it a court case, right? You're taking away you forced me to do X number of units, and I'm not getting anything else for that.
Well, it used to be 20%, it was reduced to 10%.
Yeah, they still have-
And when you have, with 20%, you didn't have a dime of affordable housing.
Okay, now 10% affordable housing,
No, I'm saying when you did the 20%.
I know, I understand, but now the 10% affordable housing, this is not like a free, like the developer is not gonna get anything out of it. They're just gonna get a reduced rent. That's basically it. So instead of getting whatever, $3,000 a month, they're gonna get $2,000.
What you're also looking for is a typical, construction for a new unit. Right now is about $300,000 to construct.
build.
To build.
All right.
So that's something you have to decide.
Let's
and that's a
try to
policy.
stick to just because we're getting a little afield, but I want to make sure we stick to
Yeah.
the specific issue. We can take up that issue as a separate, in terms of, do we want to change the affordable housing rules separately? Which is a worthwhile discussion to have, but in terms of going, just looking at the DMU two and saying, for the DMU two, do we want to consider increasing the setback from 10 to 15? Do we want to consider putting a minimum 75 feet of width in order to build a multifamily for purposes of trying to ensure the buildings have a sufficient width? And they can stitch together different parcels if they have to? What are the thoughts on that? Yeah,
I think I'm fine with that. I do. You said that it gives a level of creativity to sort of
It could,
these-
it could be more flexibly designed with the 75, so. And Joe also brought up a good point in terms of the landscaping.
yeah,
You're trying to bring the landscaping, you need to have extra, frontage, not frontage, but setbacks.
I think some of that flexibility is probably helpful to not have a canyon effect, because then the buildings will look different as opposed to the standard buildings that I think a lot of us have seen, like in different parts of both Rockland and other places.
Rock,
Well, I guess not. I'm being generous if I say long beyond that.
And I'm also, but okay, so I'm actually in favor of this, a 75-foot width for multifamily and 50-foot for retail. I'm in favor of the 15-foot setback. It's staggered, if there's landscaping, I mean, we could figure that one out.
right, that becomes a site plan.
But I'm very, for me, it's very important that the 10% affordable housing doesn't provide additional density. There are other things that can provide additional density, sustainable roofs, public amenities, but 10% is 10% affordable housing. That's in our code. That's the minimum requirement. If the developer will give 15%, whatever the percent, then I could see the additional density, but not just for the minimum 10%.
But then doesn't that change have to come into just how we deal with that in affordable?
You would have to,
Yeah.
make a separate change, it's 120 in the code, it's not in the zoning code, it's
It's in 120. It is in 120.
Yes,
That's the minimum requirement.
right, I'm saying that you have to change that,
Yeah, yeah.
We have to change it.
the,
and you may want to get some people in that know, like Jerry Levy and other people, that no housing and give you the pros and cons
So
of that.
the argument is that if you build, I mean, the rule says you, as I understood it, I'm not looking at it right now. I'd understood that it was a requirement to build 10% affordable housing.
It is.
You have to build it. But what Joe's saying is that if you do build it, there are certain givebacks you get by building. Although it's automatic, because you have to build it or do the opt-out. Now, if you opt out, do you still get the benefits of the
No, you
Minimize.
get, you
the
buy.
buyout, the opt-out to buyout?
Yeah, you don't get a.
You don't get this stuff. So you only get it if you actually build. So that's
Okay.
that's the trigger. The trigger is if you don't opt out, you get the increase. Is it an increased FAR? Is that what it basically is? He's saying increased density.
No, we do it just by the number of units, so no way. If you have 10, it's 10% of 10.
Does it change the building size in any way?
Well, it wouldn't go up high.
It wouldn't change the height, wouldn't change the
the
width,
height, no.
just change the number of units internal within the
It
building.
doesn't change the FAR.
Just make sure you can divide up the same space to more units.
Well, you're incorrect about this whole point of the DMU two and the affordable housing. DMU one is very clear in the code. It goes over the DMU one
Mhm.
and DMU two. And they're talking about the, special amenities, special
Right.
bonus. And it says the following, unless otherwise specified, all standards of the DMU one district apply to DMU district. Of the standards listed, the following do not apply to the DMU two. And here they're talking about the 10%, above 10%. In other words, the special benefits, so.
Correct. I mentioned that to you, that it does not, you get a, you get height or whatever else you get there, that only applies to DMU one. It doesn't apply to.
Right,
DMU
right.
two.
Well, you just said that,
Wow.
like, a place like Diana Place, they have the 10%, and, they got, additional 3 units.
They had density but not height.
Right,
What's that?
They had density but not height.
right.
But they're not, per our code, they're not supposed to get additional density for that, for.
If you look at local law 120,
Yeah.
section 13.
All right, I'm gonna cut this off only because we didn't prep it. It wasn't on the agenda in terms of this particular subject, which is a big subject and has lots of interlocking code provisions to it. So let's take that up. We can take that up as a new business at some future meeting, because the idea of like changing the affordable housing calculation is a big issue that we should take up as a separate issue. What we had on the agenda today was to talk about the fact of whether the DMU two zoning should be amended in some way. Now, if you're saying that one of the things that we should amend in the DMU two has to do with affordable housing, then I think we need to have a second meeting to look at that particular issue, but is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so it's looking and changing how affordable housing works in the DMU two. I don't know exactly how it works now and how it's different from the DMU one, and I don't want to do it on the fly, so let's pick up that issue separately. In the meantime, though, 15 feet setback from 10 feet, 75 foot minimum frontage. Is everybody good with that and starting to write up language that would amend the DMU two to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's hear from the public. Yes, Drazen.
So, all good
Thank you, Bob.
conversations. Okay. And I think it's a good conversation to have. I'd just like to mention that Diana Place may have a little bit special place because it's on a curve. So I think the visual impact is exaggerated there. So I just keep that in mind so that doesn't become an impetus to changes, which if it was built someplace else, you wouldn't probably even notice it as much. The other thing that I would, just from experiencing, tell you that assemblages are very difficult to come by, even if it's just 2 parcels sometimes.
What's the
Assemblage.
Stitching 2 units, 2.
In other words,
Yeah.
combining 2 parcels, it's really difficult to bring 2 people to make that happen. So you may see much less development as a result of that. And I think that architecturally a better way to avoid the canyon impact, maybe what you were suggesting, Joe, setbacks on the building. New York City has done this half a century ago, as you all know. And I would encourage you to look at that less than the frontage. I think you will achieve much better effect, because that's exactly what you want. You want the building to be set back, you want more air and light, rather than just assemblage will just prevent the development, nothing else.
All right, thank you. All right,
We do
so,
have a 10-foot, building setback on it, 32 going up. You could do more, but the fact is you're only dealing with 40 feet, so it becomes more difficult. You could do 5 and 5 and things like that.
I don't follow what you're saying.
So in other words, you have right now a proposal to also the building, setback is, mentioned and recommended for, starting at, elevation 32 going up to 40. So the top level would be, as you said, a balcony or whatever. It has to be 10 feet. I just,
It's 10 feet now.
no, it's proposed to be 10 feet. We don't have a setback, building setback.
We don't have a setback where?
We don't have a building setback on the facade of any buildings in the DMU two. And we were proposing to do a building setback, just as Johnson was talking
Like
about,
step back.
a step back.
As you go higher up the building.
Step back as
Higher up
opposed to
the
set.
You're saying further floors, setback further from the,
Right.
so in other words, if we moved it to 15, it would now be an additional 5 feet on the third floor or something like that. Am I missing
Kind
something?
of like the,
Right.
the gateway laws.
Yes, but I would go further than 10 feet.
Yeah, right.
So in other words, it'd be 15 feet at the base level, and then it might be further setbacks the higher up you
Well, the
go.
15 feet is a setback. The building setback, but the building, setback, we were saying that it should be 10 feet at the top of the building.
I'm totally. I'm a little bit confused.
But, all right, I'm totally confused. As I understood it, our conversation tonight was the current DMU setback is 10 feet. Is that correct?
That's the setback.
DMU two setback, that's the setback, yes. So I just said, the setback is 10 feet.
Right.
And we're debating changing that setback from 10 to 15 feet,
Correct.
which is what you suggested.
Right.
Now you're suggesting something else, and I don't know what that is.
We asked about a building setback to help keep the building from overshadowing the street and sidewalk below. The zoning regulations could require a setback on the street facing facade. And make it a setback of 10 feet beginning at elevation 32. No, we're at the top of the building.
Is that a further 10 feet? Is that what you're saying? It's a further
It's
10
the
feet beyond the
facade,
15
it's the
feet?
Facade.
Yeah.
It's as you indicated, a balcony or something else like that. That would be a 10-foot balcony. That would be set back. So the facade of the building is set back as Dresden was.
I'm saying, but you're saying 10 feet, but the building's already 15 feet from the street.
So.
It's an additional 10?
It's the terminology.
That's what I was trying, it's additional 10. So it's 25 feet, the third floor would be 25 feet from the street.
Right.
Okay, that's what I understand. I think that's
It
actually,
is staggered, but yeah.
yeah,
Right, yeah.
so you're suggesting that as well as being an additional avoiding the canyon effect.
Right.
Okay, I mean, I think that's a good idea as well. I'll take comments from the people, yeah.
So, but you're neglecting the fact that the majority of businesses in the DMU now have no setback, right? I mean, so that would be,
That's DMU one or DMU two?
DMU one, which is up at the, is that
No.
DMU?
DMU two's up at the top of the hill, DMU one's downtown.
Right, right. So but in DMU two, even that there's, there's many buildings there that have no setback, and that's part of the traditional part of the village. I mean, I think there's been an overreaction to Montclair because that setback, the problem with it is that there's just, there are no entrances there. There's no, and that's a mistake that the ARB made or the planning board made. But actually reacting by making the setbacks larger may be the wrong thing to do. And in fact, I don't know if you know the history of that property, but there was a property there that had a massive setback that the village, the planning board actually declined, and the property owners sued the village, and as a result, they they built what you see before you. But it's a history as to why that setback is where it is and why there was a parking lot in front of the strip mall building.
You're talking about where the Montclair is now.
Montclair is now, yeah. So, but I would look at what other traditional downtowns do, because you don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. As you see here in our downtowns, the setbacks actually provide a sense of an interior room, maybe stepping them back from 2 or 3 stories. So you don't have that canyon effect, but,
You're suggesting leave the 10 feet, don't move it to 15 feet on the ground level, but add that upper level additional setback.
correct, yeah, because what you've got now is the canyon is from the height of the
Yeah, it's
setback.
it's from the straight edge.
But you want
There's
to
no- there's no
maintain
texture.
this sort of sense of an interior room at ground level. Although that whole block area originally had single family homes and multiple family homes, so they got built up with later with those commercial things that are pressed up right on the street. So it's hard to know what there was originally, and I don't know if you want it to be a pedestrian district or not.
I mean, that whole block, that whole upper main area is complicated by the fact that there is as Drazen said, there's a curve to the road,
Right.
as well as when you're going uphill, everything's like a floor higher as you look a block ahead of you. Everything's up because you're going up the hill. When you come down the hill, it's not nearly as impressive. When you come up the hill, there is that sort of feeling, particularly at that spot. I think what's interesting is, as we've established, that the Montclair was not built to code. So it's not complying with the code as it is, which means that you can't say, well, it's a failure of the DMU2 code, why the Montclair seems to be so much more on top of you than it's supposed to be. That's really just a failure of the application of the code in that particular instance. But I'm just, John, you're coming up and you're saying you don't want the buildings to be as far back. I was expecting you to say we want a 25-foot setback. Put it back up to Pew if you have to, you know.
Setbacks are what make Route 59. So it makes, it makes it less pedestrian friendly.
Yes, and also I think the absence of retail is something to look at as you walk up the hill. And I'm sort of a mind that I kind of I like the idea of Upper Main being connected to the downtown, which you lose a little bit if you don't have any retail up there. So I wouldn't want to lose all the
Yeah,
retail.
I also think as speaking as an uphill resident, this has kind of become a mantra of mine, is there really isn't much you're really encouraged right now as an uphill resident to drive downtown,
Yep.
because there's nothing within walking, I have a hip coming down the hill.
There's not a lot of
Meaning you
that.
have to go back up the hill,
Yeah.
and there's really very little amenity up there. And if we're adding all these people, I think having the meat market there, kids go there for after school and get snacks. I think there'd be a lot more,
Not.
But there's no.
successful businesses there if there was more of a streetscape, yeah.
There's no prohibition on retail. in DMU2.
Oh, okay.
There's no
not-
prohibition, it's just not required. And most of the builders, because the retail is not as lucrative as another floor of housing, they'll build a house and they'll put the lobby in the
I
main
guess
floor.
I'm wondering if that's a mistake, and I think just from what we're saying, what I'm hearing, I think I'd encourage more thought on this and really more like.
About reinstating the retail
It's
requirement.
really easy to shoot ourselves in, but the other consideration I would encourage in that calculus, and I don't know where the line is on this, but I can tell you, because I go through there every day now, taking my daughter to school, that, we have to account for and allow for the maintenance and, of the buildings and the services needed at these buildings. And as it is, the Gateway building, the garbage truck doesn't fit in there. So now when it wants to empty the dumpster, it backs in. It's sticking out several feet. I almost got hit by a head-on collision with a truck coming downhill. I had to swerve into the other lane to avoid it. And there's parking spaces there that also, it's precarious. It makes it even more congested, even if,
That's Gateway or that's Gateway?
Yeah.
Not Diana Place.
Well, the three things combined have made that particularly tight
Doing garbage.
anyway. We haven't changed the parking spots there, so if someone's parking on the uphill side, you really kind of have to go, if you don't have to, actually, it feels like you do, the buses do, the garbage trucks don't have space, so it's more, I think, than just the building, the size and capacity that we need to think about all those
So that's a site
properties
plan
there.
issue.
Just to conclude, so the point is that we want the, up there to have the same sense of place and character that down here has, so that people stay there and they use it in a pedestrian way like we do down here. And however you change the zoning, that should be the primary goal.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's kind of the point is I do want there to be a connection to down. I want people to think that downtown goes all the way to at least to 9W. And I'd really love at some point for there to be a consensus, an idea that downtown actually goes all the way to the McDonald's, but that's a long way away. All right, we discussed, this is sometimes what, these are big issues, these are things that are major changes that we have to. So we actually are retreating a little bit on the consensus because there are some other things that we want to talk about is whether we want to reinstate the retail requirement. And I think the fourth issue, which we put aside for the moment, was the cannabis issue for DMU2. So the four issues are looking at the DMU2 setbacks. The proposal was change 10 to 15 feet, 70-foot minimum frontage, 75 feet minimum frontage. We just make it 70, so just make it 70, so I don't have all these problems. And
Now you're
then
gonna say 75.
50 feet for retail. Joe brought up the issue of affordable housing generally, not just in DMU2, but generally, but also the fact that is it treated differently in DMU2 versus DMU1. We've talked about, John brought up reinstating the retail requirement, and then the issue of whether we would want to allow for cannabis sales in that block, even though there's gonna be a real problem just putting them in there because of the church.
Right.
Did I miss anything?
Capacity for services in that area,
The what?
capacity for servicing the buildings,
Right.
given the.
But
That's less a zoning issue than it's a,
site planning issue.
I mean, I'm just saying we can't do
Yeah,
anything about
but,
the
you know,
buildings that are
sort
there.
of, to me, that's, as far as whether you're gonna, what frontage you're gonna have, how big the driveway has to be, you know, there's.
Well, I do-
You sent that to Manny, right?
Hmm?
You sent it to Manny.
Yes, and I think. I meant to see the end.
All right, do we even, Bob, do we even have like, when the issue she's talking about in terms of providing for that, there's a capacity for large trucks to pull up? Like, is that a?
We actually had a catch on that during construction when, I think it was Carlo Menudo said they were building like a little curb island in the front of their driveway. And then he basically said, I'm not gonna go back in there with that thing. And
They still having problems backing it according to.
yeah, I think they just need to back in all the way. I'm gonna talk to them about it in the morning.
According to the picture. And by the way, that curb at the Gateway Lofts, I actually warned Manny about it, that cars coming out will have to make, or going in, will have to make a loop onto the opposing traffic. And he said to me, I'm gonna go check it out with my truck. And he couldn't get in.
Right, and they ended up removing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the truck probably has enough room. They just need to be more disciplined about how they back in there. So I'll talk to Menudo about it.
All right, so let's look at that particular issue, but in terms of the zoning, do we put a zoning requirement that has like these kind of allowances to say there's gotta be an access to the dumpster area and things like that?
We do that in site plan.
Site plan, not zoning, okay. So you'll say, hey, listen, there's no way for a truck to get in here. They
What
can
we
be-
did, if
garbage
the
person.
place, for example, is, you had the fire department come in, show the truck and see if it's at the, and we actually made we got rid of 2 parking spaces across the street and made it a fire zone. So that, you could make that turn
On Depew.
on Main.
On Main, yeah, I was just saying, we just put those in just recently, those were just put in, yeah, okay. All right, here's what we're gonna do, because we didn't get, and we really do need to get to the issue of the waterfront zoning, we'll take it up in new business. Just outside the workshop, is that all right, Andy? today's new business is discussing the waterfront zoning issue, because we have materials on that we have prepared for it, so I don't want to lose the fact that we've gone into, we used our full hour talking about DMU two issues to not be able to talk about the waterfront issue, so is that all right? Because I know we have people here for that, I don't want to make them come back a different time. All right, otherwise, we're already on camera, right?
You're on, do you want to talk about the ARB item that was
Let's
also?
talk about that in new business as well, because I mean, it's 7:29, so we have to start the meeting. And let me get that. Oh, okay, thank you. I'll make sure I have the highlighted piece in front of me. It's not yet 7:30. Let me close this. I'll do that.
Well, Joe, do you mind if I come and sit down with you to talk about this whole?
You don't need my approval. You don't need my approval. Can you talk to my mom?
Well, just, you know,
I appreciate you letting me up, but you don't need my approval. None of you need any of my approval. to Talk to any of these people.
I'm only here in front.
on Friday, okay, next Friday.
Yeah, you want to.
Yeah, let's try to figure that out, because I'm confused about
Yeah.
what exactly the issue is, so we gotta tighten that up. All right, we are at 7:30
Yep.
but not by that, because that clock's always wrong, but we're good by the time on my Apple Watch,
Me
which
too.
is official time.
7:30.
All right. Will you join me? Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Village Board of Trustees meeting, March 28th, 2024. If you wish to engage in public comment, please come up to the front and sign in. We do have we have a relatively full agenda today. And we will take public comment. Usually, I was gonna put public comment to the end because we were expecting a lot of people to join in on public comment, but we can take public comments, I think, in the normal scheme of things. I do want to is Doug Foster here? No, I didn't see Doug.
No.
Just to move him up. Yeah, it's mostly to not have me stick around all the time. Otherwise, I think I don't suppose anyone's here from Jackson Lewis?
No.
No. Okay. All right. I'm just making sure there's nobody who's here for one of the resolutions that we might want to take up early out of order. All right, let's since we have a surprisingly light crowd, why don't we've had the tradition of doing public comment up front in the meeting upon any issue. So we will move that up from the end of the meeting to this part of the meeting. Remember that for any action items, we will allow public comment during the discussion of those action items. So this is really open public comment on any issue. Make sure you sign in and then we'll hand it off to Rosa. Rosa, thank you for filling in tonight.
No problem.
Thank you, Rosa. Thank you, Rosa.
And while we're waiting for the public comment to get filled out, if any of you have ever wanted to be a clerk treasurer for a village, there's an opportunity. I want to take a moment just to thank, earlier in the evening, we had a meeting here with representatives from Montefiore Nyack Hospital. I want to thank them for coming down to meet with local residents. Also, Captain Shannon from the Orangetown Police Department was here to address some of their concerns about security around the hospital. We had limited time to get to all the issues that we want to discuss, so there will be further meetings about that particular issue. But I want to thank you, and I want to thank, we had about probably 30 people in the room to talk about it. So people were obviously very engaged in the issue, and that was very, very good. And I'll save any of the comments for later on in the meeting. All right, when you're done filling out, just give it to Rosa. And if anybody else wants to come up, we always just raise your hand and you can come up. All right, so let's take public comment. 3 minutes, but we will hold you to the 3 minutes. We'll do it after public hearing adoption, 2 weeks and minutes to adopt, just reminders of you when we get done with public hearing, then skip it. Who do we got?
Louise Parker.
Louise Parker, former trustee. Hello, Louise.
Good evening, everyone.
State your name and where,
My
what
name is
village you're
Louise
from.
Parker. I am a Nyack resident. Just want to say good evening to everyone, and it's just a couple of quick things that I really have. One, I'm not sure if you're aware that one of your longtime DPW employees, he retired years ago. Clifford Watley passed away. So I just wanted to make you guys aware of that if you did not know that. He worked here in the village for, I want to say, well over 30 years at DPW under Joe Stack. So I just wanted to make you guys aware of that.
Arrangements already taking place? Or-
They're in the process of making them. I believe it's going to be sometime next week. I'll shoot an email.
I would be grateful if you.
Yes, I'll shoot an email. And the other thing was, I know it's been so long now, I'm not sure how long it was. It may have been like January when I came and you had the public hearing that you were changing on the housing issue. And you had to take it back because there was an error and you were
Yes.
re-putting it. Where are we with that now?
That, we have continued, we have a public hearing that's currently in progress that we continued from the last meeting. It's been continued now twice. The public hearing is gonna end at the next meeting. The public hearing is about accepting the results of the vacancy survey, which currently shows vacancy rate at the time it was taken above 6%. It needs to be below 5% to pass the ETPA. So we're auditing it, a matter that's been complicated by the fact that there's been a lawsuit filed by some of the buildings in Nyack, as well as some, I think, other plaintiffs in federal court challenging a state law that was passed in December regarding how the vacancy surveys could be executed in New York State. Now, I don't believe we actually did anything that was different from the way that the vacancy surveys were done prior to December, but we were still named in the suit, but we've not been served by the suit. So we don't know what's going to happen with that. We are trying to determine whether or not, just to determine the accuracy of the vacancy survey. But right now, if we accepted the results of the vacancy survey, we would not have an emergency that would allow us to pass the ETPA, at which point we would probably go out and do another vacancy survey unless we're enjoined by that lawsuit from doing so.
Okay.
That's the answer to that question.
Okay.
And just a reminder, because you came in about the issue of about the buildings, the buildings that you were concerned about when you came up here last time, those are not affected either way by the ETPA. They're all covered by
New York State.
by New York State, and those are on long-term contracts, not, and there was concern the building had been sold, and is it gonna,
Yeah.
as far as we know, and Andy did a lot of due diligence on this, those buildings are all subject to long-term contracts, and the owners are entirely
On board.
happy with the arrangement they currently have.
Committed.
To, yeah, they do just fine under that program, so they don't have any intention of changing it. And they have a contractual obligation to keep it for many years to come,
Oh.
Anything else?
No.
It's very nice to see you.
Good seeing you guys.
What's the, just while you're here, do a quick, what's the date of the African American Day Parade, which I know you put together? It's
June 1st.
June 1st?
Yes, we're starting to
We're
get
getting
everything
there.
together. Yeah, I'm starting to get, responses from people and, I'll stop in one day just to
It's gonna be great, Louise.
Update us. Yes, good.
update, but then just to finalize some things as
Okay.
well, as
All right,
far
anything you need
as,
from us you last time?
different parking regs and that type of thing for the day, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you.
Good seeing you guys as well.
Next up,
Hillary Hazen Glass, I'm sorry. Did my 3 minutes start as I walk out?
No, you start,
So
I give
nervous
it to you.
about it. Okay. Hi, I'm Hillary Hazan Glass, and I'm really happy to be here. I'm a resident of Nyack, and I love Nyack. I think all of us do. Okay, what I love about Nyack, I love that we show up for each other, and we really do. We show up for each other. We know our neighbors. We just have to rant a little bit on Facebook, although we rant a lot, and one of you responds to us and tells us what to do about our issue. And us Nyackers care a lot about Nyack, and some would say a little obsessively so. And that's true, but I'm proud to be a Nyacker. Sparked by the violence and the horror in the Middle East, someone has drawn a line in our town. And that line is the ceasefire resolution. And we're being told that you're either for it or you're working against it. If a business owner doesn't agree to support the ceasefire resolution, they are placed on a public boycott list. So essentially, the ceasefire resolution has become a boycott resolution for our local businesses that we hold dear. In a town where each storefront that has a for lease sign once employed people who we know, whenever, these are our family members, these are our community members. And we know personally because we are Nyack, and that's who we are. Turiello's Pizza is on the boycott list because they didn't sign, I guess, the resolution. This is the place where all the kids after Greece from Nyack High School went to celebrate, because that's what our kids do. They go to Turiello's, they eat, and the guys there know where my kids are, which is amazing. My son left his backpack there the other day, and they kept it behind the counter for me. That's Nyack. I'm not going to say it right, but the Palmari Wine and Spirits, also on the boycott list for not supporting the resolution. This is the place I went to learn how to make an Aperol Spritz, because apparently everyone knew how to make that but me. So I went in and I learned how to make it, but we spoke about Diwali and we spoke about festivals of lights in December, and they're on the boycott list. The Pride Center is on the boycott list, who I called for a family in crisis at the beginning of the year because they had a child who was in crisis, and they helped with that. There have been signs posted on public property, stickers put on poles that Nyack can't do business as usual. I disagree. Nyack's business as usual is a business of growth. It's a business of doing better. It's a business of raising our children, not just to celebrate differences, but to value them and understand what they mean. And we, as Nyackers, are in the business of supporting each other. We keep it close, we keep it local. So I'm asking you to continue to please keep the business of Nyack local, and don't let someone draw a line through our town. Thank you.
So,
I'm sorry, Ari.
Thank you, thank you all, again, for maintaining your position on considering or determining not to consider this resolution that's been at the topic of the subject of so much discussion here. I wanted to address a few issues, if I may, that might inform the thinking, maintaining the thinking that you currently have. And they have to do with the language around and within the specific resolution that's being brought before, that's being brought to us here and is being sought to be brought before you for a vote. I think that those who are bringing it forward really have some work to do. Within the resolution, one of the key elements are statistics about people who've been killed in the conflict, statistics about people who've been wounded, statistics about many things. But what the proposed resolution does not do is tell you where those statistics come from. Those statistics come from the Gaza Ministry of Health, which is run by Hamas. There is no other authority. There is nobody else who's pushing these statistics forward. And these statistics, curiously and interestingly, we are expected to take them at face value when they are put forward by the very same individuals and organization that perpetrated the October 7th invasion of Israel.
we are to believe that there are no combatants because they do not publish combatant numbers. So whatever the number is that it's supposed to be now, the 13,000 combatants of Hamas who are being killed in the last 5 months aren't included. They're all counted as civilians. And as well, you know, the resolution mentions hospitals. Last couple of weeks, something very interesting happened. Israel, as you may know, as you may recall, early on in the conflict, went into surrounded Shifa Hospital, found underneath it a command center that belonged to Hamas, and found within it evidence that Hamas had vehicles that had been part of the invasion on October 7th, had video evidence that some of the hostages had been there. But what they did was they moved on. They were looking for combatants, and they moved on from Shifa Hospital, which provided an opportunity for Hamas and Islamic Jihad to come back in. And in the last 2 weeks, Israel simply, once they did come back in, surrounded the hospital again. And when you know it, over 500 combatants surrendered to Israel. And that many were killed as well, combatants, because Israel took great care to ensure that the people in the hospital compound who were not combatants were also not in the line of fire. This is what happens when one line of information is used and it comes from the people who perpetrate the murders that we saw on October the 7th. I want to conclude simply by saying that these are only two of the many, many issues within the proposed resolution that should be rectified simply for honesty's sake. And I thank you once again for ensuring to this point that the proper authorities, the federal government, Congress, the executive branch of government, are the ones who are going to consider issues like this and not the village of Nyack. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sailor Madam Bong.
Hello, it's been a while. Yeah, Mandeville, 19 Dixon Avenue, something about my driveway being Clarkstown, yada yada.
Sorry.
Taylor, 19 Dickinson, my normal joke about my driveway being in Clarkstown, you've heard it 20 times before. Side note, let me know when I can give you the petitions. Happy to give them to you after on early though. So, cool. I'm gonna drop them over there. Anyways, so two things I'm gonna speak about. One, unsurprisingly, is the ceasefire argument, but also the second is ETPA. So I'm gonna jump firstly into ETPA. I am very frustrated and upset with the lack of oh, sorry. I'm getting over being sick, so that might be because usually I'm pretty loud. So I am upset, frustrated, disappointed with what has transpired with the ETPA. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know all of the nuances as to how we can resolve the issues with the vacancy studies and address the questionable results that are coming from the buildings. I will say that I am concerned from the perspective of both the conversations had with the landlords and the tenants in trying to resolve this, in that as far as I'm aware, one of the groups of the landlords that had been trying to work in supposedly good faith with the board to try to resolve and do carve outs and whatnot, have also brought a lawsuit against the board and the village of Nyack. And that is absolutely unacceptable for any organization that is purporting to act in good faith to try to resolve this issue. So my perspective is limited because I'm not in these discussions, but what I will say is that there has to be some form of accountability and there has to be some form of resolution so that the people who are involved largely with the negative impacts of not enacting ETPA are protected or have some form of recompense. It is unfair to them. They're not in a safe situation, especially with, to be blunt, Riverview and the actions of one landlord against a lot of people. So I am letting y'all know that, I hope that, and there will be other things happening beyond what the village board can do. I'm very interested in, organizing individuals and tenants And I'm gonna continue working on that on the side, so you'll probably be hearing from me a lot more in the near future, which is unsurprising at this point. The other thing,
20 seconds.
20 seconds, all right, real quick, on Ari's point, statistics on who were killed, Ministry of Health, blah, 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 Gaza is full of Hamas. There was a Lancet study, one of the best journals of medical research in the world, that has shown that the Ministry of Health is accurate. It has also been referenced by Israel itself. It shows a significant amount of racism, to be blunt, that somehow all of these medical professionals are evil Hamas members who somehow can't do addition and realize who's been entered into their hospital as casualty, whether it's an injury or a death. Somehow we have 20 out of 24 battalions destroyed. They can still maintain a death grip on the doctors. Sorry. All right. I'm speaking towards the board, but be mindful of things that come off as statistics, but are fairly prejudiced and racist in context.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up.
Mary Ann
Pumpkin.
Pumpkin.
We don't start till you start talking. Don't worry. We don't count your walking time.
Awesome. I'm gonna take a breath then. All right, y'all. So Joe, you've stated more than once, right, that you don't feel that the ceasefire resolution is in your purview.
Can you talk louder?
And that a previous board hung the Israeli flags and proudly proclaims that NIAC stands with Israel. But you posted on Facebook about that, and many members who are on this board now were on that board. Let me be clear. I agree that we should stand against anti-Semitism. I want my Jewish community members to feel safe. I will do anything in my power to stand with them against anti-Semitism. But what baffles me is that you haven't also publicly denounced anti-Arab hate and Islamophobia in our community, and that Rockland County at the moment, from my perspective, from my experiences, is not safe for Palestinian community members, Arab community members, and Muslim community members. There are those of us, you know, that are organizing for Palestine and for the dignity for their right to dignity in life. We've called the Clarkstown PD and asked them to provide support. They have not returned our phone calls. And we know that people who are standing with Israel have also made phone calls to them and received a meeting the same week. Someone made this sign to a young person while we were standing and executing our right to free speech. We've been spit on. 2 weeks ago, I stood on Main Street. You want to keep it local? Let's keep it local. I stood on Main Street with a Palestinian friend. Our sign said, "Your tax dollars are funding genocide," and "Queers for Liberation." I will not repeat to you the homophobic vitriol that I received in response to that sign. In the place where I live, that I also love. I do not feel represented by the Pride Center. I do not feel represented by the local government. And I felt very much like there was no one I could tell about this experience. That I also, because I'm standing with my Palestinian siblings and community members, that I was not safe in that moment. People have come up to us and tried to pull our masks off. A young woman who was wearing a hijab was screamed at. Several drivers have brought their cars very close to where we've been located. Israeli supporters have leaned into cars and pulled flags and signs away from Palestinian supporters. All of our elected officials have come out publicly and said that they stand with Israel, and they have said nothing about the genocide that Palestinians are facing. And if you want to keep it local, about the hate and vitriol that they're receiving here in their home. This is the last thing I'll say. As elected officials in our community, your words have power.
And what is happening, that people are standing with Israel and not saying anything else, it emboldens the behavior that I have been on the receiving end of, and I want you to know that, and I would like for you to do better.
We could stare for a moment. Let me address some of what you said.
I have the video if anyone wants to see it.
I'll just say I'm deeply sorry for what you described happened to you on the streets of Nyack. That's terrible and it's unacceptable. You asked about does the board have a position on what you call Arab hate and Islamophobia? And I am quite comfortable saying that the board, I personally, I'm not gonna speak for the board, but I personally, it's unacceptable. All those forms of Arab hate, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, racism, homophobia are unacceptable in our society. You're asking me to do something, you've been asking me to do something else, which is take a stand on a public policy issue that I do not think is relevant is something that the people of Nyack elected me or the board to do. Now, I'm not gonna get into a huge dialogue with you. I just did want to have you come up so I could apologize to you, since I'm the mayor of Nyack, we're the village board of Nyack, that you were mistreated on the streets of Nyack by people in any circumstance is unacceptable, and I'm sorry that you experienced that.
Say it publicly and say it loud,
I'll
and
be happy
we're gonna
to.
hold you accountable to
I'm
that.
happy to say that publicly.
Thank you.
All right, next up.
Maybe,
Does anybody else want to address?
I also want to say, what's your name? Sorry.
Marianne Lincoln.
Marianne?
Marianne.
Marianne. I just want to say that I stand with Joe. And if I was on the street and you were accosted or insulted or in any way because of your
Queerness.
and because of your
Religion, ethnicity.
Anything,
Mhm,
I would be the first one
mhm,
to help you and defend you.
mhm.
Okay?
No one did anything. There were people
Not speaking-
watching.
I don't know, I'm speaking for myself personally,
Mhm,
that is unacceptable. All forms of homophobia, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, that is completely unacceptable in the village of Nyack.
But standing and saying you only stand with Israel sends a message.
We're not talking, we're
We
talking-
are.
no,
They're all
no,
connected.
Let's not have, I don't want to have a debate about it. I did want to, what I want to do is apologize for the incidents that you described happened to you on the streets of Nyack. The village has not said it stands with anybody as a formal statement. It has not.
It has it. I have the, it's on
We put
Facebook.
up, we,
Show you.
you're talking about the immediate aftermath of the events,
It says
yes.
Nyack stands with Israel with Israeli flags.
Show that to me afterwards. I'll be happy to
Yeah.
look at it. Okay. We haven't said it from this, I have not said it from this spot. Does anybody else want to speak about this? If you don't, it's okay. I just want to give you.
Yeah, well, I can't believe that that happens in Nyack because Nyack's changing, but that is unacceptable that that happened to you and that nobody came around. Could I just ask when this happened?
Yeah, yep, it happened about 2 weeks ago. Yep, it happened on March 13th.
And you were by the square?
I was standing at Hezekiah.
Yeah.
Park. Mhm.
It's the same thing. I do want to apologize because Islamophobia is not okay, just like racism isn't okay, but I do think that I really don't have any words for it. So other than to say that I'm sorry that happened to you and that I do stand with you on that. I don't think that should be happening. I know there's other forms of racism and Islamophobia we have experienced in Nyack. We have a long history of that.
Totally.
So, you know, because I love this town and village as much as anyone else, we have to do better.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Next up.
Next,
Ria. Is it RH? Ria.
All right, is Rhea here?
Rhea?
Not yet, she's on her way, so you can.
She's on her way, we'll go back to her.
All right, at some
Michelle?
point, I'm just gonna say, we're not gonna have a 2-hour public comment, so if you're on the list, you're on the list, otherwise we'll have another opportunity for public comment at the end of the meeting. Who's next?
Michelle? Yeah, can I have that
Michelle.
I'm just here to support the ceasefire resolution. I feel like a lot of people have already spoken as to why it's important that the town make a public comment in their official capacity. So I think I'm just gonna share some rather disturbing news that's coming out of Gaza this weekend. And I don't know if anyone has spoken on this yet, but right now, there have been many reports, and this includes witness testimony and victims of Israeli soldiers in a hospital. Two things. They forced doctors to leave their patients at gunpoint and killed doctors who refused. And they captured Palestinian women, including pregnant women, stripped them, beaten them, sexually assaulted them. One woman was sexually assaulted for 2 days straight. She is now unable to speak. Another was 5 months pregnant. She was assaulted in front of her family. In fact, all these women were insulted in front of witnesses who were forced at gunpoint to watch their loved ones be assaulted. This woman was pregnant, begged her captors to let her go because she was 5 months pregnant. They beat her for hours, stripped her, forced her family to watch them assault her, and she did not survive. So this is state-sanctioned sexual violence being used. These are legitimate reports. These aren't allegations. These are real victims. This is something that's being armed and funded by us, by our tax money. And unfortunately, right, public statements have been made in support of Israel, and that's fine. There's no problem with showing solidarity with Israeli victims in a violent conflict. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But there are tens of thousands of Palestinian victims. There are tens of thousands of Palestinian hostages. There have been thousands of Palestinian hostages being held by IDF under military rule, and many of which are children, at least half are children. And they were being held since before October 7th. So I think this is important to recognize that this is not something that just began in October, and that there have been victims of this for a very long time. And once again, these aren't individual actors doing these crimes. This is the military. This is part of their protocol. This is state sanctioned by the Israeli government, and it's supported and defended by the American government. And our tax money is funneled over there in all sorts of ways, in legitimate means and non-legitimate means. And then we have, just no public recognition of the effects of us funding and arming an army that has no problem basically doing systematic gang rape, and it's being documented in real time. So I think just wanted to share that, and I'll concede the rest of my time.
Thank you. How many more we got on the list?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
R Lang.
I'll be brief and I'll try to speak loudly, not my best thing. I'm Rebecca Lang. I'd like to thank the board for when hate graffiti was spotted in Nyack and reported to the mayor, how quickly he made sure that hate graffiti was removed. It was vile. I had seen it the night before when I was mentioning to a friend of mine what I had noticed and asked her if she had seen anything similar anywhere else in the town. She told me that she had seen that several weeks before. It was on a street. I
didn't quite understand what you said.
Hate graffiti.
Hate graffiti.
Hate graffiti.
Okay.
And the mayor made sure it was taken care of and was gone within a few hours. My friend had reported it to somebody else. Nothing had occurred. So I really want to thank the board for making sure that that hate graffiti was removed, that nobody else had to see it, read it, and experience it. I also agree with the mayor that local governments should not be making farmhouse. Thank you very much.
E Lang.
Good evening, and thank you for giving me a minute or two. I'll be brief. 85 years ago, both of my parents fled Nazi Germany with their lives to come to America to live the American dream, and they did. And now, sadly, they are reliving their past with all the hate and anti-Semitism that is rising at an alarming rate and is being camouflaged by pro-Palestinian. It is now once again fashionable in America to be anti-Semitic. I want to thank the mayor and the board and the village for quickly removing, as my wife said, some hateful graffiti that has appeared around the village. And I also believe that honestly, foreign affairs doesn't really have a place in local politics. The job of this village board is to make Nyack a great place to live.
Everybody's done that.
But I want to make this very simple and very clear. Either you support freedom or you support terrorism. Either you support victims or you support the rapists. Either you support the hostages or you support the perpetrators. Either you support a free society or you support oppression. Either you support Israel, America, democracy, and our Western values, or you embrace terrorism, tyranny, hatred, Hamas, and their puppet master, Iran. Thank you.
S. Hausner.
How many on the list now? Where's on this now?
I'm sorry,
How many do we have on the list now?
2.
Oh, okay.
One more after, and there's gonna be an
There's gonna be a,
ask.
A request for further comment by somebody who didn't sign in.
okay. Good.
Hello, I'm Stephanie Hauser. I'm a resident here in Nyack, neighbors with some of you. First, I want to thank you as a former elected official, a local elected official. I know that hearing public comments sometimes, especially when they're not of issues related to what you deal with in local government, becomes a lot. And so I thank you for taking the time and the opportunity. I just wanted to, I wanted to speak, but I wasn't going to address anything that some people said before, but there were a couple of speakers that questioned some of the facts that Ari mentioned. And when I just heard the last, or a few speakers ago, Michelle, I think, speak about state sanctioned sexual assault, I felt the need to comment on that. Al Jazeera and Hamas have said that these accounts are not true. Normally, I wouldn't quote Al Jazeera and Hamas, but I think we need to hear all women. And I wish that the speaker had also acknowledged the over 200 hostages that are currently being held in Gaza and the hundreds of women and men who have been victims of sexual assault. The UN recently published a report showing how many Israelis were the victim of sexual assault by Hamas. I moved to Nyack from Clarkstown because I've always loved that Nyack was such a welcoming community and that such a diverse community. And we celebrated that. I felt the village of Nyack always celebrated that. But now there are members of our community, neighbors, who are singling out Jewish businesses for selling blue and white bagels. They're publishing lists of Israeli and Jewish owned businesses not to go to. They're putting together lists of owners and shopkeepers who support a ceasefire resolution, but not publishing a list anywhere. I was in Nir Oz. I was in the communities around Gaza where people were kidnapped. I was there days after the war started and again a month ago. To see the horrors that were there, a true pogrom, I've never seen anything like it. But I'm also afraid of what we're dealing with here in our local communities. Jews shouldn't be afraid to wear their Jewish pride loudly, as I am today. And I feel like because of some of the sentiment that's going around, we are starting to feel that way. We shouldn't be seeing businesses being boycotted. We shouldn't feel like Jews have felt historically over time that we're not safe in our own communities. I do want to thank the village board, the Clarkstown and Orangetown police for keeping all houses of worship safe and people safe in our communities. But I ask you to continue to do that, continue to take on the important business of the village of Nyack, I know we have roads to be paved this year and garbage to be picked up and exciting events to have. And I really hope that we can continue to be this warm and welcoming community, and not be torn apart by the divisive nature of a very intense, emotional, international issue. And we can continue being neighbors together. So thank you. Thank you for your service. And thank you for hearing all of us.
Thank you.
Skylar.
Stellar?
I'm even sure I can.
All right, go ahead.
No, it's, I mean, someone who was on the list, I just want to make sure that she's getting a chance to speak.
We'll be as accommodating as we can, so go ahead.
Okay, it's just that she was on the list before me, so I'm glad to give her my time if there's a risk. But I do think there's enough time for all of us. I know your timing is, it's a few minutes, right? Okay, so, hi, I'm Skylar. I've spoken to y'all before. Not everyone in this room knows me, but my name is Skylar. I'm a woman. I'm a teacher of young children in this community. I'm a Jew. My Hebrew name is Shulamit.
Yeah, please talk to us.
We can't hear you. You have to be quiet.
Everything that I just told, I've told them. I'm sorry, everything I've told them, I've told you, but there are people in this room who are being disrespectful, so I'm attempting to address
Don't
them.
talk to them. No,
They're-
don't address them.
Thank you. So what I told them that I didn't tell you is that my Hebrew name is Shulamit. That's all you missed. Okay. So right now on the website, on the Village of Nyack, nyacknewyork.gov, anyone who cares to go there can find a letter from October 10th entitled "The Village of Nyack Stands Against Anti-Semitism." Please know that all of us who speak here today do as well. It refers to, I quote, Nyack as a community that prides itself on its diversity and how deeply we love all of our neighbors. It also reads, "The Village of Nyack does not tolerate bigotry and anti-Semitism, and we urge all community leaders to stand together to condemn this public expression of hate," the same that a previous speaker was referring to. It also says, "The Village of Nyack condemns the acts of heinous brutality by terrorist organizations against Israel. We stand united with our Jewish friends and neighbors here in Nyack and across the world. To all those suffering in Israel, our prayers are with you now and in the days and months ahead. Likewise are mine. Join Mayor Hammond, who of course is not the mayor right now, and the village board members, some of whom are still on this board, this evening at the courthouse, Rockland County, for a candlelight rally for Israel, hosted by the Jewish Federation and Foundation of Rockland County." Now, you continue to tell me that you will not sponsor a vigil. I think it's really unfortunate. I understand it was a different board at the time, but today, when you go to the website right now, if you care to look it up, it's in the newsletter archive, it says on top, "Message from Mayor Rand," who of course did not write this letter, but my understanding is that you were on the board at the time as deputy mayor. Now on Facebook, which I don't suggest anybody go to, but if anyone in our village and beyond cares to go find this letter, posted on the Facebook page, Joe Carlin for Nyack trustee, written on October 10th, 2023, not attributed to anyone in particular, just the Village of Nyack. If anyone on Facebook is a member of the private group We Love Nyack, they can find comments from the personal page of Joe Rand announcing that the village put up Israeli flags along flagpoles on Main Street, along with an FYI that they were only taken down because the village needed to put up Halloween decorations. This is different than what we've been told here. Additionally, anyone in the group can read from this personal page that the village is going to work with some local nonprofits, quote, "as a part of an event to express support for the victims of the atrocities committed by Hamas in Israel." How can you continue to sit in these chairs and tell us that this is not within your purview? That you, and I quote, "don't think this is the place of the Village of Nyack and the Board of Trustees to delve into such an issue, which frankly, we don't have any standing, we don't have any impact." Look into the eyes of your community and tell them that you don't have any impact. They need your support, everyone. Thank you. I'll say if you wanted me to, I'm not sure.
No, we're good.
Okay, thank you.
This is last.
He was the request.
There was somebody that signed up that wasn't here?
Rhea.
Yeah, that person already spoke.
No.
Oh, then, go ahead, let them speak and then we'll change subjects to Alex.
Hi, I'm Rhea. At least 32,552 Palestinians have been killed, and 74,980 wounded in Israeli attacks on Gaza, according to Al Jazeera as of today, March 28th, 2024. On March 14th, when we all last met, 31,341 Palestinians had been killed in Gaza in this ongoing genocide. That means in the last 2 weeks, more than 1,000 people have been killed. So while we hear that a ceasefire resolution even being considered for this village's agenda is a memorializing resolution, a pointless action, or a symbolic gesture, 1,000 more people died. Sorry, I meant to say 1,000 more people were killed in a genocide. During a genocide, there is no action that we take that is pointless. There is no statement that we make that is symbolic. There is power in a ceasefire resolution being passed here miles away because people here in Nyack, thousands of miles away from Gaza, feel immense grief in knowing that people are being killed by the thousands, in knowing that people are quite literally being starved to death. So to politely tell us that we are wasting our time, to kindly state that this is out of your jurisdiction, and to quietly share your condolences without engaging in any action is frankly the epitome of pointlessness. As our town representatives, all of you are our direct access to political power. You are supposed to advocate for us here in this town, in Nyack, and we live in a country that insists on being complicit in genocide, in a country that has decided to send billions of our tax dollars to allow Israel to brutally slaughter innocent civilians. Nyack not considering a ceasefire resolution says both to the people here in this community and to our state and federal elected officials that we, the people of the village of Nyack, are perfectly okay with sending weapons to perpetuate Israel's war crimes and that we find genocide perfectly acceptable. I believe instead that Nyack has a responsibility to pass a ceasefire resolution to honor the grief we feel as a community and to unequivocally say to the broader community of the United States that this village stands against genocide. One person being killed is an entire universe lost. How many more universes have to end for Nyack to acknowledge and pass this resolution? How many more people have to be killed? Thank you.
It's just Alex now?
Alex?
Alex, go ahead.
I'm Alex Borstein from the Legal Aid Society. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but I have some concerns and questions. If this is not the proper forum for this, proper time, please tell me. I'm concerned about verification. Next meeting with the board is in April in EPPA. I don't know what steps, if any, the village has taken or is planning to take, and whether I said at the last meeting, I would be happy to help. Legal Aid would and other people would, if there is a need, do some work on verification. I don't know where we stand. And if it's better discussed in private, I'm happy to do that. Just would like to be able to do that at some point soon, because time is going to run out any minute now. That's it.
One of you and I have already had a dialogue about this.
We have.
Let's continue. Let's have that. I'll reach out to me tomorrow and I'll
I
talk to you.
appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'd rather not talk about it publicly at this point. Jack, I see you're here and I know that you wanted to address us. Are you waiting for some other opportunity? Jack Dunnigan, I'm looking behind you, Jack.
Jack.
Did you want to speak?
Rand.
I know you had, I'd heard that you wanted to address us tonight and you're not on the list for public comment, but we're doing public comment now. If you'd like to, we'll do another round at the end, but I didn't want to make you wait if you want to speak.
No point. No.
Okay. All right.
I'm enjoying myself right now.
Okay, let's move on. We have the adoption of the minutes from both February 29th and March 14th. All in favor? All opposed? The motion carries. Both minutes are adopted. I'm sorry, we have an abstention on the 314 meeting. She was not here. So an abstention on we should probably have done them separately. So, all right, let's presume that was the vote for 229. We were all here for 229?
Yes.
All right, then for can I get a motion on 314?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Any abstentions? Natalie's abstaining on 314, but we all voted for 229. Let's move on to our action items. I don't think any of them relate to people that are here, so we'll just take them in order. Resolution 24-46, accepted the audited voucher summary. Can I get on the table?
Second.
Any comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Resolution 24-47, the resolution of the Nyack Village Board of Trustees to approve a permit application for an event in Memorial Park by the Phoenix Festival. Can I get this on the
So
table?
moved.
Second.
Did you get that? We did?
Second? No.
No, it's a second. We talked about this last week. We worked it out with Craig Smith and a Phoenix Festival to do basically a Friday, Saturday, Sunday event in September where they'll use the upper lawn for the Phoenix Festival. Any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 24-48, resolution of the Board of Trustees to authorize a work zone parking prohibition for the 2024 paving project.
Second.
Natalie and Pascal, just the flavor of this, Andy, what's going on?
It's a previously unknown oddity of village code that without a village board resolution declaring a work zone, we can't actually tow vehicles that are in the way of the paving process. I want to thank our village attorney for discovering this when he was working with Rosa here on a problem. And so this resolution hopefully covers us in the event that we are unable to find the owner of a car that needs to be moved for construction purposes.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Resolution 24-49, the resolution to approve a service contract with Barry Burner for maintenance of the boilers at Village Hall and the Senior Center at a cost of $5,000 for the year. Can I get on the table?
Second?
Pascal and Donna. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, 24-50, the resolution approved publication of a competitive bid for replacement of the Nyack Brook culvert in front of the DPW at 63 Catherine Street. Can I get on the table?
Motion. Second.
Andy, this is new. What's going on with it?
So this is a successful effort by our grant writer and Anne Marie and our engineer to get FEMA to pay about $500,000 to replace a part of the Nyack Brook tunnel that's collapsing due to stormwater impacts and so on over the years. There is a village match on it of about $52,000.
Match 10%.
Right. And FEMA's generous in their paying for 90% of the project. It's necessary. There's actually literally a sinkhole in the parking lot there that we're keeping people from parking on top of or anything like that. The brook goes, if you're not familiar with it, from behind where the bank, the closed bank is, across 9W, across the front of the firehouse, the DPW, and it cuts over towards Main Street. It ends up coming out daylighting down Main Street.
It daylights by
behind
the
the Karen
forest.
area right there is where you can see it. So it carries a lot of water. It has lateral lines coming in from the neighborhood and so on. And when there are breaks in those lines, the water starts to scour down the soils from above, and eventually it results in a collapse of the surface. It can result in a situation where the earth collapses into the culvert and entirely blocks the flow of the water, resulting in flooding conditions.
It would be useful, while we're on this subject, when we start doing the budgeting, could we get a list of all the active grants that have been, approved within the last 12 months, or actually anything active by when they were approved and whether they're still ongoing or whatever else,
Sure.
for like the last year or two? Because I think it's when you look at the budget, you see that we have a $6 million budget, and you say, how are we doing all this on $6 million? But there's another significant amount of money that's coming through on grants that are not part of our
External
budget.
funding, and we have to make sure that we have the funds to provide that matching money.
Yeah.
So Jen and I were actually talking today
It's
about,
not in the budget right now.
it's not, but it can be financed eventually, but we might need to have the money to pay it before it gets.
Yeah, but it'd be good to see what we're on the hook for.
So that's part of, we can talk about that more in our budget workshop next week,
Okay.
to make sure we cover those costs as well.
We can find the money for that. All right, thank you. All right, so, any further comment or question about this? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. That's 2450. 2451, resolution scheduling a public hearing on the budget for April 11th at 8 p.m. This is at our regularly scheduled meeting on April 11th. That during that meeting, we will have a public hearing on the budget. Can I get on the table?
Motion. Or second, whatever.
Joe, Pascal. So yeah, this is we're also having 2 workshops, correct? Want to just announce the dates of those workshops on top of?
There are 2 budget workshops coming up. Hold on,
I can find them, hold on.
It's April 4th at 5 o'clock.
April 4th at 5 o'clock. And then April 18th at 6 p.m.
Because I'll be back for that one. Yeah.
Yes, and unfortunately, Don will not be here for the 4th, but then we have the public hearing on the 11th, and then we have a meeting on the 18th, a workshop to continue to work on it. And then at the village board meeting on the 25th is when we plan on adopting it. All right. Any comment or question? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. That's 51. Moving on in 2452, resolution approving a license agreement with Nyack Boat Charter to conduct business from the Nyack Marina. Can I get this on the table?
Motion.
You got that? Yeah, we've had this agreement with Doug Foster. He's not here, but he usually comes to talk about this, but we've had it for the last couple of years. The agreement, we get 5% of the gross revenue, and he also pays for the slips that he uses. He's using fewer boats this year than he has in the past, so fewer slips, which is reflected actually in the budget numbers, which I've looked at. And, but it's a good business and it's good to have in the marina. Any comments or questions on it?
Yes, I'd like to know what, the 5%, what did it actually turn out?
I think we got about $10,000 in one recent year out of that. But with the sale of his larger sailboat, I'm guessing there'll be less activity. So we hedged down a little bit on our expectation regarding that.
On the revenue.
Yeah, I actually feel that it is understated, the 5%. I mean, it's a major resource that he's using, his company's using for his business. So I would like to see it go to 7.5% at least. I mean, I don't want to be a stickler on this, but if the other members, the mayor and the other trustees don't agree, then I'll withdraw it. But I think we're looking for ways of raising revenue. And I think that another 2.5%, will go well into our budget requirements. So you talked about, it was 10,000. So we're talking about 15,000 altogether.
Well, it was
5%.
Oh, okay, but it'll be lower this year because he's got fewer boats.
It might be lower, okay.
This is, I mean, this agreement's been in place for a while. Was the
Several
agreement
years.
expire?
We had it for a 1-year period, I think twice in a row.
Okay.
I made this one a 2-year term so that we didn't have to revisit it.
Is it 2-year term? Or
The proposed agreement is a 2-year term.
It's 24 and 25. It says
Yeah.
2 years.
It's seasonal, so.
It's the same agreement, just now it's for 2 years.
Right.
And when is the last time we increased that? Do you know?
I don't think we had
What
it.
happened was, it was a flat fee
Right.
at one point, but because of the variation in the business activity level, it seemed more reasonable to have it be a percentage, so the better he does, the better we do.
Yeah.
And vice versa, it's sort of a shared benefit, shared risk. And so the previous boards opted for that. In the interest of having a boat charter out of the village marina, which otherwise wouldn't exist. They also have a flight board kind of side to that, so people have a chance to get on a flight board and kind of experience the river.
It's called, what's it called?
They're called flight boards. They're sort of electric.
It's called a flight
It's
board?
like an electric surfboard with a keel.
I understand Joe's point, but my feeling is that we had an agreement with them. It's been going year by year. We're just renewing the agreement. I think he's been a good citizen. He runs a good business in the village and he is very supportive of the local nonprofits, and I'd rather not reach into take a deeper cut, particularly because I get the sense that they've scaled back the business because it hasn't necessarily been, they haven't necessarily been, making a ton of money from it. So I'd rather not reach in for any more. As much as I respect his point, I know his heart's in the right place to give people a little more.
Yeah, I remember, I wasn't on the board, but I do remember coming to those meetings. I guess, has there been a recent, I know the last time this came up, I remember him presenting like his finances, just to kind of show like where the dip came. It was like, during the pandemic, I remember him doing a full presentation. Is there a way we can just get that information? Just for.
And we can ask him to come back and make a presentation to the board.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be good.
But he needs to get some certainty as to what he's doing. Why don't we pass this for 1 year?
Okay.
Let's pass it 1 year. You okay with the
Yeah,
1 year
sure,
agreement?
sure.
And then we'll,
Yeah.
and then let's have him come in and we'll talk to him about what we're doing in the future. We'll work with 1 year. We're not committing to 5% for 2 years. All right, amending the resolution to be that we're authorizing a 1 year agreement at 5%. Can I have a motion on that amendment? All in favor of the amendment? All right. Okay, now can I get a vote on the motion? All, we already have it seconded, so if you get a vote on the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, unanimous, 1 year, 5%, and then we'll talk to him about doing some future arrangements with him. All right, thank you, Joe, for bringing that up, and you're thinking, you're on the right path. We gotta think of ways to get more revenue, because the budget meeting's coming up, and we have a gap there that we gotta fill. That was 2453, resolution approving an application to the Community Development Block Grant Program for $300,000 for improvements to the Nyack Senior Center. You can get this on the table.
Motion. Second.
Any discussion or comment? Just, we're looking for a grant, right? And
So we
this is-
didn't get the grant yet. This is just.
Yeah.
This is the application.
Highly likely to get it. Not gonna work, but it's a good project.
It's a good project, and it's to improve the senior center. What do we do? What are the improvements supposed to be?
Heating and air conditioning, windows, lighting, some flooring work, some doors don't close right.
Does it have heating and cooling right
Yeah,
now?
it does.
So it's improve those. It
It's improvements on
has
all of it.
windows right now, so it's
Right.
not about not having windows and getting. windows. Yeah, I know, I'm just saying, when I said what is being improved, it's like, well, we're putting in windows and HVAC, and I'm like, well, it has those things, right? We're just putting better ones.
Yeah, and
It's not that building up or not. It's not one of those.
Replacing ones that don't work right,
All right, good. So we get working windows and working HVAC and everything else. All right,
and a roof,
any further? We have a roof on it now.
yes.
Okay, but a better roof. Can I get, any further comment or question? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. 2454, authorizing a permit for the use of the Nyack Senior Center for an interfaith iftar dinner. Did I pronounce that correctly? And that's April 4th, 2024, 6:30 to 9 PM. Can I get that on the table?
Motion. Second.
Any comment or question? Pascal, I know you've been involved in this. Do you want to just give a quick summary of what's going on?
So in, I guess, an effort on my part to sort of thread the needle as best as we can, given where everybody stands in the village. It came up in our first original meeting. I spoke with Susan Smith from FOR, and we thought a good way to sort of help bring people together in, these goals that we're all looking to achieve, is through an iftar. We have not done much for our Muslim community in Rockland and in Nyack, and I think this is at least the way I would like to see us kind of shining a light on a community that is here, rich and vibrant in Rockland. So this is what we decided to do. So I encourage everyone to come, April 4th, 6:30 to 9 PM. But go to our budget meeting first, because that's really important. So go there first and then come in.
Is that, it's 6:30, not 8:30. Why do I have 8:30 on my calendar? 6:30?
6:30, yeah.
6:30.
Because Breaking Fast, correct me if I'm wrong, is at 7? Yeah, so we moved it up a little bit so that we give people enough time to get there. Our friends from the Rampo Nape will also be there with us, so it should be a good event.
Well, I certainly encourage everybody to come. I will be there. Any further comment or question? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Resolution 24-55, authorizing the issuance of bonds in a principal amount not to exceed $500,000 to finance the acquisition of a new swap loader, stating the estimated maximum cost thereof is $500,000 and appropriating said amount for such purposes. Can I get this on tape?
Motion. Second.
Joe, Pascal, want to give us the
Sure,
30-second summary of what this is all about?
So
A
the
long resolution.
village has a few large trucks that are needed for plowing snow. They're heavy enough to move the snow, spreading salt, and also hauling roll-off containers full of yard debris and salvaged metal, wood chips, and other kinds of things. The swap loader is an essential vehicle. It gets used a fair amount for that kind of roll-off container work. It also carries the leaf machine that sucks up those piles of leaves, compacts them, and stores them to be brought over to the Rockland County Waste Authority. So it gets used a lot. Our idea here is to have a swap loader, which will have, in addition to those capabilities, a plow rig on it. So that we'll be able to do double duty with that seasonally and take one of our plow trucks, which is aging, off the fleet. So we'll reduce from 3 very large trucks down to 2 because one can do double duty. And hope to get a good price for surplusing both the old swap loader and the old plow truck that's also replacing.
In the budget, I looked at the bond section. We haven't put that bond into the cost of servicing that bond into the budget. Have we yet for the expenditure?
I guess we gotta double check that.
Okay.
I mean, wouldn't this?
It might be. I didn't look at the
This is
specifics.
one of the things on Mayor is that it takes such a long time to get one of these trucks that it's like I want to use the word crapshoot, but with good luck, we'll actually get on Freightliner schedule for like 2025, for the thing to be built. So the bills won't come due for over a year.
Okay. Can I recommend that the vehicle, the truck that it's replacing, the plow, that should keep that plow and not surplus it and we refurbish it, so we don't want to be in a situation where we only have 2 trucks for plowing and then all of a sudden one of them goes out and we have a spare. I mean, that's just a suggestion. I don't know operationally if it's good enough to keep on maintaining, running and so forth, but it's an idea.
Yeah, and also bear in mind as well that the surplusing of the heavy equipment is a separate, it's also by village board action. So when we get to that, we could talk in more detail about whether it makes sense.
All right, any further comment or question? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. That's 2455 unanimously. Next, 2456, a resolution approving an agreement with DRS Operations to purchase bill credits associated with solar electricity generation at Meadows Solar Facilities. Can I get this on the table? Comment or question or explanation from Andy?
So just a quick rundown. There's a
You have a
detailed
memo on this, right?
The detailed memo. It basically, it says there's a number of different kind of renewable energy deals at play that we've talked about recently, so I don't want folks to be confused. The village procures renewable for itself now through the CCA, the aggregated community choice. I'm sorry, it creates an opt-in system for village residents and small businesses through the CCA for renewable energy. It buys its own energy for streetlights and so on as renewable. And it has recently decided to adopt an initiative to encourage residents to sign up for solar source energy. The village can also do that and also take advantage of the cost reductions associated with procuring solar energy for its streetlights and other government uses. This resolution enables us to have an agreement to procure from a solar project upstate, essentially. And it saves us some money. The other great thing about it, and it's identified by Marcy Decker and the Sustainability Committee as enabling us to cross a certain threshold in terms of points for clean energy choices, that it gives us eligibility for another $250,000 in grant funds if we put in applications that are super appropriate. So it enables two things. One is it saves us several $1,000s a year in energy costs. And the second is it gives us access to hundreds of thousands of dollars in grants.
Last question. The savings, of $7,500 a year. How long is this agreement gonna go for? Is it a 1-year agreement or is it?
That's a great question, Joe, and I don't have the quick answer for you on that. The term of the agreement, it would be in the agreement, which I circulated. I have to look up to see what the term is.
We circulated so many things, it's kind of hard to, but I'd like to know if.
I can look it up for you and tell you.
Yeah, because I want to make sure that the savings that we have is actual. And maybe next year we could source a different company if this doesn't come up to that level of savings.
Right.
Is this in your memo or is the
Yeah, I can remember.
agreement? Would the memo say what the date is for?
I'd have to look it up. Yeah, it's not in,
No, we can-
the term isn't in the resolution, so.
I got like.
We can come back to it. Just give me a few minutes, I might be able to find that answer.
All right, why don't we, what do we do? Table for the building? Take a motion to table.
It isn't, we want to be first in line for the grant money. Because it's competitive. So that's part of what we're trying to get done is to get sort of in line for that.
All right, motion to table this until later in the meeting.
Motion, second.
All in favor of tabling the resolution for a moment? Blah, blah, blah. Thank you.
Aye.
I'm looking for it. I have the memo here. I'm not, I just don't.
I have the memo, but I don't have the agreement in front of me. All right, so we'll take that up, we try to get the answer to this and we'll pick it up at some point when we get to later on in the meeting. In the meantime, report from OPD. Andy and I did have a meeting with the Orangetown Police Department. Earlier this week, we talked about the incident that's. Oh, I'm sorry, we didn't do Jackson Lewis. I'm sorry, there's one more resolution. Forgive me.
Never mind.
Number 2024-57, I think, they'd be so upset with me. Approving retainer agreement with Jackson Lewis Law Firm for labor law counsel services. Can I get on the table?
Motion, second.
Any comment or question?
What does our esteemed attorney think about the rates?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, is this a nominal rate?
Yeah,
For them, not for.
don't look at the number, just
I would hesitate to offer an opinion that could potentially be defamatory perhaps to a law firm, but I will say that that number doesn't shock me. I've seen that number for specialized legal attorneys and counsels that are specialists, so to speak, in a very specific nuanced area. And labor counsel is an area, and for example, I don't have that skill. In my resume, when I offered it to the village of Nyack a year and a half or so ago, one of the things I said was, that's an area that you'll need outside labor counsel. It's a specialized area that requires particular skill. I feel like what's that movie? It was Liam Neeson.
I have a series of, special
Taken.
skills.
So Jackson Lewis is like Liam Neeson in it's a movie.
Really? That's your analogy.
No, you get full points for that.
I will,
So anyway, I don't think 410 is
my experience
shocking to the conscience.
in my private practice, representing a company that also has an occasional need for a labor law attorney, the number does not seem out of line for what I have paid in private practice for somebody, because that's also not my special skill, labor law.
Mayor,
To answer your question.
I just note also that this is a discounted rate, believe it or not.
Yeah, so
And it's a maximum fee, so like their junior associates will hopefully be paying less than this.
what's the,
Now it's starting to shock the conscience.
what's the retainer?
Is simply, I mean, we're not actually paying them money unless we use their hourly
Oh,
service.
so you pay per hour. We don't pay,
They're retained to be on call essentially.
Okay, so that's,
So we've pre-agreed to the hourly rate by the
okay,
agreement.
so there's no retainer upfront that we.
Right.
Okay, that's good.
Take it is the movie. Take it.
Yes. Leave me. All right, I think it says it in every movie. Any other comments or questions about Jackson Lewis?
No.
Can I get, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Mayor,
Do we have a date?
it's a 3-year term.
It's a 3-year term. Now, is that something that they proposed, we proposed? Is it something that is standard?
It's standard in this agreement anyway. I mean, I don't know if it's possible to negotiate that or not. We could find out.
Can I suggest that we authorize signing the agreement with instructions to the village administrator to see if he can reduce the term?
Yep.
But I'd be willing to 1 or 2 years. But if you can't, would you be against it if you can't reduce the term? If we're still not going to do it for 3 years? No. You'd still do.
Yeah, I think that, you get a good insurance, you know.
Usually I don't want to have to put it off. If time is of the essence to some extent, I'd like to make sure that we get in line for these credits. So my suggestion is that we vote for the resolution, but with the instruction to the village administrator to see if they can negotiate down to a 1 or 2 year agreement. Is everybody good with that?
They're talking about the water.
No, I'm talking, no, the lawyer's done. We did the lawyer.
The solar.
We're back to the solar. We moved on to the solar. So the solar, the Jackson Lewis agreement, I think it's a 1 year agreement.
1 year.
It's a 1 year, that's a 1 year.
Okay, I got confused.
The credits, the solar credits issue, it's a 3-year agreement. My guess is that's probably their standard agreement. I don't know if they'd be negotiable on it. Suggesting that we vote for the resolution. And we vote for the resolution with the instruction of the village administrator to, if they can negotiate it down to 2 or 1 years, that they do it.
Okay, yeah.
Anybody else? Is it people good with that? No good with that? What do you think?
I'm fine with that.
No? Yep. All right, let's get the motion back on the table, so I can get the motion back. Somebody move it.
So moved.
Second, all right, any further comment or question? With the proviso that I included, all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. That's it for the resolutions. 2 departmental reports. No one's here from the OPD, I don't believe. But I can tell you 2 things. One is we had a meeting with the OPD earlier this week, Andy and I. We discussed the incident that happened with gunfire in near Hezekiah Easter Square. To clarify, nobody was shot. The gun was not, if it was fired at somebody, did not hit them. Nobody was hurt from the gunfire, but it's still very distressing. One item of note is that based on the fact that we've been really asking the OPD to have more officers that are walking the beat and actually present in the village and not just sitting in the car. The gunshots were heard by a police officer that was walking the beat in downtown Nyack, and he rushed to the scene and he got there virtually immediately after it happened, which is, as we discussed with the OPD, is one of the benefits of having somebody on the street. When something does happen, they can be very quickly responsive within the village contours. And they agreed to that. And I will say again, they've been very responsive when we've requested that. And this is just another reason why we did request it and why it's good that they did it. And we were all in agreement about that. We did talk to them about the fact that I did not get information on what was happening until later on the day. I was not in New York at the time, but it did take a few hours for me to connect with them to get information. And they agreed that they would, when they can talk about it. They don't like to talk about ongoing investigations. They want to make sure they have the facts correct before they release anything, but they said that they would be more responsive in getting back to me quickly on issues so we can make a public statement. Because I did make a public statement, it wasn't until about 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and people have been speculating all day in ways that were probably not all that helpful. So hopefully we'll give you more information on more quickly in terms of settling people down when something distressing like that does happen. Third thing is that we're very grateful for Captain Shannon, who was here earlier tonight at 5:30 for a meeting with residents near Montefiore Nyack Hospital, where he talked about some of the processes that they follow when they bring people into the hospital who might be in some form of distress, and talked about some of the security issues that relate to the hospital. It was very nice of him to be here along with the representatives from the hospital. And there were about 30 residents that were here. Anything else about the police? All right, village administrator report.
A couple items, just a reminder, the park project is moving along. We've now put up chain link temporary fencing to keep people off of the great lawn area as the contractors start regrading the lawn and getting it ready for seeding with grass. So that fencing is in place to keep people from going through the construction site. We hope everybody cooperates with that. Sometimes people don't, and it results in unsafe conditions. I wanted to bring up a kind of somewhat of a policy matter for the village board, and that is when we allow people to use the senior center, which is a wonderful building, even though it could use some repairs. Typically, we bring that to the village board, because that's been a standard practice. Sometimes we get kind of late requests, and we allow it. Like there was a baby shower recently for someone who lives in the plaza nearby Rockland Gardens. It just seemed very reasonable to allow them to use the senior center. Do you have any objection to us providing those permits administratively when those requests come in for small, like a larger thing, like we have the Pride Center there as a continuing programmatic presence? I would always want to bring that to the board. But my sense is that for a one-off kind of small event, it seems reasonable to be able to respond and open it.
Why don't we follow this practice? You notify us about it,
Yeah, because
But-
I'd like to know who's in there.
but, so we're aware of it, but I think that we're okay with you approving it if there's no time to have the approval. So there's not a meeting between their request and
Right.
when the thing's supposed to take place. Or our meeting's on Thursday, they want to do it on Saturday, we got to give them enough time to get invitations out and
That's
stuff.
the thing. Yeah.
I'm okay with that. I mean, I think that you should let us know what's going on, just in case there was something and we would say, wait a second, that I know that name or I know that person, and there'd be an issue there.
Right.
But I can't think of a situation where that
Yeah,
happened.
I mean, I think, just like we give the building inspector, building department, latitude, I think, and we give the, village, clerk, latitude about, Memorial Park. I don't see any problems with that. As long as it's not a huge event, I mean.
Right, I think it should be,
Like a smaller.
I mean, common sense would say events with, 25 or fewer people, something like that for a few hours.
I think consult with us so that we know that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then just so we're just email us, say, this has been proposed, I'm approving unless anybody has an issue and wants to discuss it. And then we
Okay.
can, and if we really have a strong issue, then we could, we don't have to make a vote on it, but we could discuss it just sort of as a,
Right.
well, we could discuss it with you individually, not as a group on an email, since that would be an online meeting, that's not allowed. But we could express our concerns to you directly.
Sure, and I can talk to the mayor.
I
But
just can't believe somebody wanted to do a baby shower in a building
there's
without
no
roof.
windows.
With no roof and no windows, side stores. How that happens?
Oh, dude,
That seems
just
very
a
weird.
question, Andy, sometimes, cause I will see it or I'll see it late, do you take like our silence as just like a thumbs up? Cause at least for me, I usually can, unless I'm. like,
Yes, honestly, if I get no pushback.
Okay.
Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Okay.
Which with me is dangerous because I'm 150 emails behind. So sometimes you don't hear from me. It doesn't mean
Yeah,
anything.
that's why I'm like, I normally don't have an objection, so I don't want you to just
Right, if you're,
be waiting for an
okay.
answer.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, yeah.
Anything else?
I mean, there's so much going on. I just wanted to mention that we will be back with more Broadway sidewalk work this summer, to finish up the TAP project. We're still trying to figure out how much sidewalk we can do based on the budget we have. And, but we're pretty close to being able to make a determination about that.
Is this Depew that you're doing now?
No, this would run from the corner of Depew on the river side of South Broadway up to, hopefully not just to the Y, but beyond that to Key Bank. It depends on how much money we've got.
Okay.
But just so you know that the work to try to sort that out is in progress, and we should be able to tell you.
So that block is what? The Y and what
The
else?
YMCA, basically, Hickory
Is there anything
Dickory
else on that
Dock.
block? Oh, there's some retail on that block.
Yeah, Hickory Dickory Dock.
Just, all right, Hickory Dock's at the end of the block.
Wine
Okay.
store.
That's a difficult location because Hickory Dickory said tree, the roots.
Yeah, I, that's one reason why I want to get that block done, and so we can kind of sort out some tree issues. Also in front of Key Bank, there's a couple of big, beautiful trees which are buckling the sidewalk as well, so.
Let's make sure we don't take down any trees. Last time we took down a tree was
Yeah, Well, that's actually a good point. The one on the corner of Depew, I also feel like we should avoid cutting it down. What it does mean is that whatever sidewalk we install there is not gonna last as long as we would hope. And
Yeah, but
hang a number of years, 3, 4, 5 years, it's gonna be starting to get pushed up by the roots. And we'll have to keep an eye on it.
Can you put like a bed around it at all, or it's just not possible?
There's very little room between the tree and the fence. It's already too narrow technically. You have to get a kind of a waiver from the state.
Okay,
But where possible, we try to expand the tree bed so the roots have more room.
right, okay.
Well, gotta watch out for the trees. Anything else?
That's it.
All right, village clerk. A report from the office?
Nada.
Besides the budget, just FYI to everybody, I did a lot of work on the budget this week. You got an email from me, which has, the spreadsheet for the budget with some additional columns that identify the percentage change and the dollar change from last year's budget, as well as an explanation and some comments. And it highlights those revenue and expense areas that are discretionary as opposed to issues that we really can't touch, like benefits and stuff like that, that we don't have any discretion over. So take a look at it because it should help us move along with that quickly. But I sent it to you today with the instruction not to look at it until at least tomorrow because we had the meeting tonight. It was not relevant to the meeting tonight. So that's the village clerk. Old business, the work session report. We did have a work session at 6:30 to discuss some land use issues. We really only got to discuss the DMU2. We had a memo from the village planner. We discussed some changes to DMU2 to try to ensure that we avoid situations with the kind of canyon effect that we've had with some of the recent buildings that went up there. Some of the discussions involved increasing the setback from 10 to 15 feet and increasing the minimum width for a multifamily home to 75 feet. Thank you. Not 70, 75 feet, as well as creating an additional upper level building setback of an additional 10 feet for the higher levels. So it'd be 15 feet at the ground level and then another 10 feet up high. And we've talked about the idea of adding back the retail requirement or encouraging in some way retail for the DMU2, which is the area on Upper Main. And we did get into, and we put a pin to discuss later, issues relating to the fair housing requirement, which is broader than the DMU2 issue because it also affects DMU1 and maybe some other zones as well. So we will take that up at some future time. Anything else on the work session anybody wants to comment on? The what? Oh, and the other issue is that cannabis retail sales, we talked about the fact that they are not allowed in DMU2, they're allowed in DMU1 and the commercial corridor. And there was no conscious decision to exclude it from DMU2. It just was not something that we ended up putting in the resolutions when we passed cannabis, we put it into the law. So we might revisit that and see about adding back cannabis retail sales into DMU2. At this point, it's academic because we still haven't gotten any approvals in the Nyack area for any of these facilities to open. Anything else on the work session?
No. Can I have a old business?
Sure.
Okay, if you don't mind. Spring is upon us, and what comes with spring? Gasoline leaf blowers. Now, we have an ordinance that was passed the year before last, staging or changing the permit or the allowance of gasoline leaf blowers. Last year was partial. As of January 1, it's permanent. So as of this year, you're not allowed to use gasoline leaf blowers. That being said, there have been cases in the past week or so of landscapers using gasoline leaf blowers. And it's very frustrating for the residents and how to deal with it. And I think that there should be some type of protocol. The village should have a protocol. If somebody sees a landscaper using a gasoline leaf blower, there should be protocol of what they need to do. Take pictures of it, notify the village administrator or the building department, and go from there. I don't want to see residents feeling like this, we have an ordinance, a law, and that's it, they can't do anything with it.
Well, what they can do is they can take pictures, post them on Facebook and make snarky comments.
Well, of course.
That's what they've been doing, which has been very effective.
So I'm looking past that, I'm looking past that. If we had a protocol that they could follow, then the snarky comments will always be
People can
there.
always make a call to village, but again,
Well, I remember, I guess, when when we first put in the leaf blower ban, there were door hangers on everyone's door reminding them of the specifics of it. Is there a way, I guess we can, even if it's too late for this year, maybe do that for next year?
well, we'll probably, it's still early,
Yeah, it's
and
still pretty
only
early.
April. We're not even into the season. I mean, this is like the first
It's just,
wave.
right, it's just worth reminding folks
There were a couple,
individually.
there are a couple of landscapers that are doing it, and they're very, how would I say, adamant that they're gonna continue using it. And, there has to be there is supposed to be a mechanism, right?
Oh, no, I agree with that. I would think that whoever is hiring them may wanna should be the problem with the one on the hook for that.
They are.
They are.
Yeah, the resident, does it involve finding the homeowner or finding the?
It could be either or. It's up to $500 fine. It's a summons to court. And the building department has to write up essentially a violation and identify the landscaping. It could be the landscaping company, it could be the property owner, the individual leaf blower. They're issued a violation. We talked with Manny about it today. We clarified some questions with our village attorney, and time permitting and when you can catch them, they are ready to start issuing summons.
I mean, I do think that enforcement of this is relatively easy because it's very visible. Like you can drive around for 45 minutes and probably catch 10 people violating the law right now.
Facebook certainly helps.
Well, yeah, but then by the time it gets on Facebook, it's too late. They're probably gone. But like, if we start to know who it is that's doing it, we can just look for their trucks and then find them and make another $500 to help us, pay off our debts.
Yeah, it's actually quite.
Do they have to be caught in
I've
the
given
act?
my cell number to a number of people so they could text me photos and I refer them over to the building department. It
Do
is.
you want to create a hotline, like some sort of number that people call?
I need the pictures. I need. the
Oh, we
pictures.
we just create a Google voice number. Google voice number is all we
Have a
need.
lot of people contacted you regarding this?
I have a few people who are pretty regular. Yeah.
I would make this, I think that's probably good. I do think that maybe once a week, doing a sweep, drive around for an hour and issuing tickets would be a worthwhile way of just letting people know that we're enforcing it. And maybe reaching out when we have consistent violators to let them know that they're gonna keep getting a $500 fine. And I think we focus the fines on the landscapers right now. The citizens they have no idea what their landscapes are doing. And I had a conversation with my landscaper and like I decided to change landscapers rather than deal with it. So I'm getting somebody who's a real green landscaper to do that, which I think people should do, but it's a burden to put on them. It's a lot easier to go to the landscaper and say,
Absolutely.
you're in violation. But I would also say this, to the point of the person that posted it, how can we pass a law and there's no enforcement of the law? And I'm like, there's 500 people, drove through stop signs this week in Nyack and drove 38 and the 35, and people break the law all the time. It's a matter of enforcement. It's not easy to be every place at every time to enforce the law. So let's just let people know that yes, we passed a law. And sometimes people break the law. They go too fast and they drive through stop signs and they litter and they don't clean up the poop from their dog. And when we can't be in all places at all times.
I guess maybe I don't know if it will be a helpful or might be a burdensome suggestion is for any, having a list of who does electric or not.
Yeah.
Different landscapers, so that way at least people know, look, you don't have to stick with this
That's a
guy.
good idea.
There are a bunch of other, important places that you can get this.
Let's promote them as alternatives.
Be careful.
Yeah, that's sort of.
I can promote personally.
Personally, yeah, but not as.
We couldn't put it on the village page, we won't want to.
But there's an active anti-leaf blower group. did the flyer before
Yes.
and promote these kinds of ideas.
Yes, they're the ones that created the flyers. I noticed they gave me a bunch to hand out.
Well, if they're listening.
Hopefully they do more, yeah. And they can put out a list of, here's some phone numbers for some.
I wanted to say one other thing, that is that I've had, I don't know, probably a dozen or so conversations with landscapers over the last year. There are a lot of them who are taking it really seriously. I know you don't feel their pain, but they do have pain, because of the cost of equipment. Particularly for large yards where if you try to comply with the sort of current standard for lawn care, you need to move a lot of leaves with a very large machine. So they're registering their challenges related to that and talking to property owners and finding out kind of what price makes sense as they transition. So a couple of them have said they do want to come back to the board and talk with the board about the economic impact of the policy. So just to be aware that there is a dialogue and there are people who are trying to comply, and
The inclination is to do what Upper Nyack does, which they allow for certain times of the year and they disallow other times of the year. The problem is that what you're really trying, and then it really just makes it tough for the landscapers because they can't commit to going green. Like they can have both mowers, they just have both mowers all the time. Like there's some advantage to them just taking the dive. And we gave them 2 or 3 years notice to work on to get their equipment. But you're right. I mean, this is not easy, and it wasn't an easy decision when we passed it. And it's one of those things where we felt like on principle it was really something we needed to do. And I'm very sympathetic to the people in business who are incurring costs because of this, or the residents who are now gonna pay higher fees to get their leaves, and who get their leaves, collected and grass clippings and everything else. They should talk to the one with the goat, because the goat will come. Loan that goat out. Anything else about that? That was your piece of old business.
All I'm saying is that, we should, I will tell people, and I've been telling them on social media, take a picture of both the truck and the blower in action and send it to Andy. That's it.
That's probably right.
And he'll take care of it.
And send it to him his email address. I wouldn't necessarily.
Just bear in mind that the building department can't always just drop everything.
Yeah.
They're in the process of fire inspections and a lot of work for construction projects.
I made that point on social media. That, we're limited in our resources.
But they do respond. They do respond.
Okay.
All right, the other bit of old business was electric vehicle purchasing. Tell us about this.
Just a note to the board, the board has registered as a policy matter wanting to have electric vehicles in the fleet. We have one on order for the building department. We're going for 2 more for the water department, which also, because the water meter reader puts a fair amount of miles on, and the superintendent does a lot of running around for monitoring the system. So the sustainability committee has identified buying more EVs as also a very easy way to expedite our achievement of a certain point threshold to position ourselves for more grants. So it's part of a strategy with a fair amount of urgency on it. So we're moving forward with EV purchases as an easy way of hitting certain benchmarks on our emissions reductions goals.
And that's New York State funds for 2 more EVs, but I know we also have at least 1 EV for the fire inspections.
Right, that one's already on order.
That's already on order.
Yeah.
I would really recommend that someone who's driven an EV for 10 years that they hold, I mean, they lose a little bit of charge over time, but there's not a lot of moving parts. Like we should look at buying, if we can, I guess the grants probably don't allow it, but we should buy, 3-year off lease EVs because they really do. They do just fine and they do depreciate pretty quick, so you can get them cheap.
So they don't spontaneously combust.
And they don't generally spontaneously combust.
Any drop of a hat.
No, they generally do not do that. So they occasionally do. I'm not saying go buy one of those Tesla trucks. I'm saying buy one of them. buy like a nice, use Prius, so these two people be able to get around. Anything else on old business? All right, new business. We said that we would take up some of the issues that we we're gonna talk about in the workshop as part of new business. So let's get back into it. Let's start with the ARB issue. You wanna get back into that?
Sure. So
Okay,
a quick summary on that is that the board has discussed, I think at least twice now, a adjustment on the scope of ARB review. The last version of that was that there'd be a threshold of 30% of the elevation, i.e. the side of the building, for ARB review for the sides and the rear. And the front of buildings would continue to trigger ARB review for virtually any change that occurs. I think trustee Carlin had asked for samples to be provided of projects that would be included or excluded using those rules. You all received probably about a dozen samples that were in the packet showing different kinds of projects and
These are projects that would not have to.
they're in both categories. There were projects where they were included for ARB review under the new rule and projects that would be excluded. For example, there's one project in there where somebody's just changing the style of window on the side of their house. It wouldn't hit a 30% threshold, therefore would not go to ARB. There was projects for a big front porch project, which would go to ARB. There are different scales of construction that would either hit that threshold or wouldn't hit the threshold. And as we discussed before, in many cases, a project requires review by the planning board or the zoning board because of a setback issue or some other kind of question results in a public hearing on it. But some things, the general point of the project is to try to kind of rebalance the cost versus benefit of ARB review for minor changes to homes, since there is cost involved for the owner and for the village to trigger ARB review over very minor kinds of adjustments.
and the determination will be made, the 30% determination will be made by the building inspector.
It's mathematical.
Joe's concerns, well-founded concern on this was about people making changes that they would not have to be required to give notice to the neighbors.
Right.
That under this rule as it stands, the notice would have to be given for anything that involves the front of the building and anything that involves 30% of the space on either the sides or the back of the building.
Right.
But if it was below 30%, it would not go to ARB and be decided entirely by the building inspector where there would be no notice requirement.
Right, similar to many construction projects which are internal to buildings and are not the subject of public.
Like not go to planning board. Yeah, you're doing something that doesn't affect if you don't go to planning board, you don't get notice to the neighbors. Joe had concerns about this, so I'll let him.
Yeah, well, we're also talking about changing the sequence of the.
That we also talked about that and the board decided to go to a public hearing on that matter. I think it's on the 20th.
To me, it makes sense to entertain this if we make that change in the order. In other words, going from the building inspector to the planning board and then to the architectural review board.
So that's the issue. It's actually on public hearing on May 9th.
Do you want to set this for a public hearing on May 9th and get the legislation drafted? Is it already drafted?
The order of operations is already drafted.
That's what we
and
have.
already planned for a public hearing.
Okay. I'm saying, can we add this to the public hearing that we're doing since they're both ARB issues?
Yes.
And then get the legislation.
Yeah, if you want to move it forward, that's why we're having the workshop question, because the board wasn't ready to set a public hearing on the ARB's standard for review.
30% rule.
Right.
So it's 30%.
Side to the back.
Less than 30% or 30% or less? I mean,
If a proposal affects an area greater than 30% of the side of a building, it requires ARB review. If it's less than that, it would not. The sample projects were included in that memo. And anything on the front of the building, however small. Currently, virtually any visual change to a building goes to ARB. And the argument has been made that it's excessive cost.
And unusual,
minor
because a lot of other jurisdictions don't do that.
Right.
A lot of other municipalities don't do that.
I mean, that's why the village board recently amended the ARB scope related to signs, because there were sign applications where all they're doing is changing the name of a business on an existing sign, and the ARB was reviewing that kind of pointlessly. And so the board decided to exclude that from ARB review because there's no meaningful change taking place.
All right, has the 30% rule been drafted into legislation yet?
No, I mean, it's easy to do, but we haven't presented a fully drafted law to you, it's still at the conceptual
Well,
level.
why don't we get the legislation drafted for the next meeting? And then we could still set we can set the public hearing for May. We have plenty of time.
Sure.
Because I just think it would make sense to do the public hearing for both of the ARB issues once.
Right.
That would be a good idea. And by the way, it's part of his, not the.
Which part? So it was drafted.
I think so, yeah.
It's basically drafted.
Oh, okay.
And
So
we
it's a
can-
version of it.
We could, if the village board. And maybe you want to see the actual drafted ARB scope legislation. I mean, you're still talking about it.
Let's see, because we have time to set the public
Sure.
hearing. There's no reason to set the public hearing before the other one, so we might as well do them on the same day.
So
And
why
we have time to do that. So let's get the legislation in the packet for next week.
Okay,
Look at it and we decide whether to set a public hearing on it. So there'll be a resolution to set a public hearing next week on the legislation that will be presented to us next week, or 2 weeks.
yeah.
All right. Any comments or questions about that? All right, the other, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, John, please come up. I'm sorry, thank you. Yeah, public comment is totally welcome on these.
Okay, yeah, this 30% thing with the ARB is something that comes up
30.
every few years. As a way to sort of limit the scope of the ARB. And the first thing I would ask you to do when you walk home tonight is look at what you're seeing. You're basically seeing the sides of buildings. Like if I walk up First Avenue, you walk down Hart Place, you're seeing the sides of buildings. It's fallacious to think that, you only look at the fronts of buildings. So the logic of that, I don't quite get, because we see the sides of buildings. Maybe, the rear of building, I would accept. But really, in most of the way that buildings are spaced in Nyack, as you're walking in the street, you see as much of the side of a building as you do of the front. And I have to say too, as someone who's been following the land use boards for a while, the ARB agendas don't seem like they're overburdened. I mean, when I was on the ARB, we could have 12, 13 applications, and now I see mostly it's 5 applications a meeting. So, and I would also suggest to you that the building department is, they're sticking their nose into a lot of other things that are keeping them too busy. And that there's a burden, that we talked about previously, how they're requiring permits for repairs, for things that seems to be taking up perhaps a lot of energy and time of the building department, and staff. So, I would look for other ways. The village residents seem to care about the character of the village, and increasingly it's an issue, the way we feel about this village and how it looks. So I would urge you not to neuter the ARB and look for ways to empower it.
And there'll be time for we're well away from establishment, so you'll have more time to make that point. Anything else? All right, the other issue, sure, on this issue?
No.
Oh, then no. The other issue that was part of the workshop that we didn't get to was the discussion about amending the waterfront zoning. There was a memo that was made publicly available as part of the workshop packet, that was available this week, that I drafted a week or two ago for the board, that analyzed the pre-2017 version of the waterfront zoning to the version that was passed in 2017 and is currently in effect. And did a side-by-side analysis. I'll just share my overall conclusion was that the new waterfront zoning is, I think, more sophisticated in a lot of ways, and it would not make sense to retract it and go back to pre-2017. But the larger point, I think more the thrust of the reason this was brought to our attention was the fact that the new zoning did raise the potential maximum height of the buildings from 45 to 52 feet and raise the maximum width of the building from 60% to 70% of the width of the building, and increase the possible FAR, which relates to the square footage, from 0.65 to 1.5. Did I get that all right?
Maximum of 0.95 to 1.
Oh, 0.95. It was 0.65 is the base, okay. 0.95 to 1.5. Those three changes, the height, width, and the square footage inside, were the issues that can be discussed. And I know people have said, well, they'd like to restrict the size of buildings in the waterfront zone. So I'll leave it at that and say, does anybody want to make comment on it? Public or here on the board? We'll start with the board. Any comments you want to say?
I appreciate the work you did, and I think it's a very fair assessment.
Thank you. Do you have any comment about that? No, I appreciate that. You can feel free to continue to go on. Things about me. But do you have any-
I didn't think there was more to that. I won't get there.
Yeah, I was waiting for him to say, but there was like a but hanging in the air. It was a nice objective, yeah, but I totally disagree with you. What do you think of what, I mean, you know, you proposed this and
I
you.
proposed it, and you make some great points. Again, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I think that these modest changes will, I think, help a lot in terms of the height, in terms of the width and density.
You're saying scaling them back?
Scaling them back from what they are now, but not going all the way back to the 2016 original.
Changing the other things that are also.
Right, and there are other things in the text amendment that I concur that they were useful. And so again, this is a mix of different, this is the old and the new, and this is basically a good compromise. And do you want me to take that back when I said it right?
No, you can say that. It's nice once in a while to hear that. My position is different only insofar as, here's my basic point about it, is that the increase of the height is dependent on the increase of the width. So if you want to go higher, you have to go narrower. The increase in the width is tied to the view thresholds, which the more view thresholds you provide, if you provide more than 2, in the old code, you can only go to 60%. The new code, if you provide more than 2, you can go to 70%, which means you could then trade down from 70% to get yourself more height. That's basically the dynamic there. The one thing I think that you have correctly seized on as being the larger issue is the fact that there's a dramatic increase in FAR, which from my perspective, and the FAR increase, which is the floor area ratio, which relates to the square footage and the amount of units in the building, is tied to a determination by the village board as to the design and access, the two things, the grant of public access and public amenities, and 2, the adherence to design guidelines, which that second part is very subjective. And so my feeling on the zoning is that I would not change those numbers, because at the end of the day, the village board gets to make a determination as to whether the FAR should be elevated all the way up to 1.5. If it's not elevated to 1.5, then what you end up with is a building that, if you don't have the FAR, it doesn't matter, you can't make the building as big, there's no point to making the building as big as you could make it without the FAR, and you only get the FAR if you satisfy the village board with your adherence to the design guidelines and the public resources. So I would not amend it on the numbers. I would also point out that the width can only be added if you have 3 view corridors, which would require a building that expands over 4 blocks, and there was not a parcel where that would be possible. That's not what TZ Vista did not, when it was applied, did not did not count as 3 view corridors. It only got 2, so it only got 60% of the width anyway. It did not get 70% of the width and then trade down to get more height. So I would leave that as it is, but I'm willing to entertain thoughts from the rest of the board, and if people want to weigh in from the audience, that's fine as well.
So what are you saying? You're saying that?
I'm saying
I'm retracting that?
I'm not retracting. I said what I said about those was, these are reasonable suggestions and we can make those changes without undoing all the work.
Yeah.
But I said we should start that discussion.
Okay.
I wasn't saying I was not endorsing those points. How do you take that? we thought it was reasonable because I agreed with everything you wanted to do.
No, I didn't agree, well, I.
You agreed with that part, yeah. No, I'm not, listen, I don't know if it's I don't know if it makes a dramatic change one way or the other, but I feel as long as we have the final say in whether to approve the building based on the design guidelines, that the design guidelines are the key to getting the floor area ratio, without which the height and the width don't really matter. I think that we still have the trump card, and I wouldn't change it because I'd still like to have that trump card to be able to hold that over a developer to make them adhere to what we want them to do, which we wouldn't have the ability to do it if the maximum FAR was lower. But I'm willing to hear from the rest of the board on it and the public. Anything from here? Any public comment? I'll take it, but you used up a lot of your time, so come up and.
That was on the other last thing.
I know, but with 3 minutes is 3 minutes, but you can be quick.
Two separate issues. Well, the increase in FAR, I mean, really, you look at it, it's like 125% increase over the previous legislation. So that was a huge increase, and that really is the biggest part of the problem. You're looking at, allowing something that's denser than anything they're talking about building in Ramapo, 130 units on 4.5 acres. So the other thing to look at too is the height, how the height's measured, because if you measure it from like the Gedney Street property, it was maybe 4 or 5 stories, but as you go down, you're looking at like an 8-story building from the bottom of Main Street. So, and from the waterfront. So you're looking at basically a giant building that maybe 4 stories at Gedney, but the totality of it, and you're seeing it from anywhere else, is 8 stories. So looking at like how the height is measured is something also to consider. And I've actually just considered the fact that these public-private partnerships for providing amenities in the village just never have worked. So it's never, we tried it with Claremont. We can't really rely on private developers to provide the amenities that we want in the village. So I don't, maybe it's working a little bit better in Tarrytown and Sleepy Hollow, but I wouldn't just throw away our waterfront and give it away to luxury housing and close it off to the rest of residents. And again, I urge you to think about the future of Memorial Park and what it's going to cost to maintain that park down there over the next 50 years. And here we actually have a vacant parcel of land at Gedney Street. And it's not going to be vacant forever. And we need to think about the future of Memorial Park and the future of our waterfront. And it's, no one's talking about that.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Yeah, Roslyn.
So just a brief comment. I do agree with your comments, Mayor. I'm always in favor of a discussion and negotiation and careful looking at the projects rather than rigid guidelines. Those projects result in better results. So I think that the idea of a special permit.
Come up because we can't hear you.
Can you tell us what your interest is in this? Do you actually own the property there anymore?
So my name is Dražen Čačković, and I'm one of the 3 partners who own the property on Gedney Street. So what I think is beneficial is to keep, as the mayor said, the trump card of the special permit that the village board has to discuss with the potential developer, the scope and the design of the project. It results in a better thought through project than rigid guidelines. That's what I tried to convey about 4 weeks ago, that there is relatively little difference between the old and new, except for the FAR, which I agreed was a little bit higher. But as long as the units are roughly the same number of units and the density as it was in the previous code, and they are, the difference in FAR can come only from larger units. That, as I tried to mention last time, is the difference between the units for sale, which you would tend to have a little bit larger units, and the units for rental, which would be smaller. So reducing FAR most likely would result in a rental project rather than a sale project. One thing to consider. Well, that's what I'm saying. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, so what do we want to do? Joe has suggested reducing back to the height and FAR limitations of 2017, pre-2017, while not changing any of the other material aspects of the revision. My feeling is that I would keep it the way it is, because I think we ultimately have the decision-making authority anyway. But do we want to pursue this? Do we want to get potential? It's up to you all.
No, that's not what
I'm sorry, did I misunderstand? You want to reduce the height and FAR?
I want to follow what you wrote here. Change the maximum height back from 52 feet to 45 feet. I'm sorry. Change the maximum height back from 52 feet, 45 feet. Okay. Right now it's 35 feet going up to, sorry, not right now. The previous zone was 35 feet.
It's still 35 to 52.
52. Now it's to, well,
It's 35 to 52. You want to change to 35 to 45, the way it used to be. Isn't that right?
yeah, to 35, but the maximum of 45.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what,
okay, okay.
I thought that's not what I said. I thought that's what I said.
Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe
Okay, no, I'm saying you want to change the maximum height
the maximum
Width.
height,
and FAR back to where they were in pre-2017.
yes.
That's what I thought that's what I thought you wanted. Okay.
Can you say something now?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, because I feel
Please
like,
stand up and come to the podium. That won't be weird.
no, I really don't want to stand up, but I
Okay.
just.
Just speak loudly.
Your name? I just feel like it's so insensitive to have, such an emotional topic of war, followed by this. I just don't understand that because it's so emotional, right? And there's so many, you know, I get really flustered when I talk, but I don't know what I'm trying to say. I mean, it's like, we're talking about how many, like 30,000 people, right? And being killed, and it's not Jewish, right? But I'm not for, I'm for ceasefire, right? It's so emotional, and yet, why couldn't this have been discussed after you went through everything that you went through? I don't understand that, because
Because this is our meeting. We
I
have an
understand
agenda.
it's your meeting, I understand your meeting, but it's such an emotional topic,
2
right?
weeks ago, we did it at the end.
I'm sitting here, all the, you know.
I'm sorry, we did what? All right, let me just make it clear. This is a meeting of the Board of Trustees. We have an agenda. We allow for public comment, which we allowed for anybody who had public comment to make up to 3 minutes of public comment at the very beginning of the meeting, because we believe in people having the opportunity to be able to address us and raise whatever issue they wanted to raise. And many of them came here to raise the issue of the Gaza issue, okay?
I don't think you really addressed it, though.
We don't have any obligation to address issues that get raised by public
Why,
comment.
because why?
Because we've previously made, I'm not gonna debate with you. The answer is that that's not part of our
Why do you
agenda.
not debate with me? I mean,
Because I'm not here to debate with you. I'm here to conduct the business of the village of
You
Nyack.
said you were an audience. We're not your audience.
You're not required to be here. You're here of your choice. You made your public comment. Well, they made their public comment. We've listened to them and we're moving on to our agenda.
But you didn't even address, the situation about where you stand.
We've addressed it
Facebook.
I'll address it now. We've addressed it previously that we're not taking a stand on issues of foreign policy that do not relate to the basic obligations that we have to manage the affairs of the
But
village.
I think that you did, I didn't see, I'm not on Facebook, but I heard that on Facebook.
You wanted an answer, that's the answer. I know you don't like the answer, and that's,
You made a stand on Facebook.
I'm,
And what?
On Israel, you made multiple.
you're asking us to take a stand on a public policy issue relating to the ceasefire. We're choosing not to. That's our answer. Is there any other questions?
You're pro-Israel on Facebook.
I'm,
Is that not true?
I'm not gonna
Is that
debate, I'm not gonna debate this issue with you. If you want to talk to me after, you want to talk to me outside the course of the meeting, I'll be happy to talk to you about it, but the meeting is about the business of the village. That is not the business of the village. We've been very accommodating to let people make the public comments they want to make. Public comment time is over. If you want to make a public comment about the issue that's right now in front of the board relating to the waterfront zoning, you can make it. Otherwise, you cannot. Do you have anything to say about the waterfront zoning? All right, thank you.
Is listed on.
Not
the
any,
agenda?
that we moved it up to the beginning to accommodate the people that were here,
There's
so.
public comment listed at the
I
beginning,
know.
and then there's public comment at the end.
I'll be happy to take public comment, but not repeat public comment from the people who've already commented.
Well, I didn't finish my time, for example.
The answer.
I this whole thing has been.
All right, we're not talking about my friends, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate your passion about the issue. We have said what we're going to do. We have a position that we have taken. You disagree with that principle and you're entitled to disagree with that principle. You're not entitled to continue to interrupt the meeting. So we're going to continue the meeting. Does anybody have any other comment on the waterfront zone?
Public comment still at the end.
Well,
On the agenda.
I'm gonna be limiting public comments at the end. If you want to stick around to the end, you can stick around to the end.
Thank you. You work for us.
Yep.
Yeah, you do work for us, actually.
I work for
You work for
the,
the town.
I work for the village. And that's fine, and I've given everybody the time to make comment. Public comment's over. I can either end the meeting now, or I can continue the meeting. But if you're not gonna let me continue the business of the village, then I'm just gonna end the meeting. All
I
right,
think you should have started with the business of the village.
can I get a motion to adjourn?
How about executive session?
Oh, we have to do an executive session. Can I have a motion to go into executive session? I need a motion. Second, can I get a second?
Can I just make a suggestion?
Well, why don't you make?
Well done, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, they don't have.
We can have a comment, we can comment on the motion, but let's second the motion.
To the other trustee.
The other trustee that-
Any comment on the move to executive session? Do you want to say something, Pascal?
Yeah, I think because we're still in old business, we haven't moved to public comment yet. So if we could have,
But he's
no,
saying
excuse
there's
me,
not gonna be public
Hold,
comment.
hold on, if I could just get my statement out. We're still a new business. I said old business. We're still a new business. We still do have a couple other agenda items to get to, so if you could just hold your comment until we get through everything that we're discussing.
But didn't the mayor just say that he's not gonna allow it?
I said I would allow public comment. I said I would not allow public comment if people have
Yeah.
already made public comment.
It is
I
on
thought
our
people-
agenda to have public comment, but that's not where we are on the agenda right now.
Okay, I'll wait.
Thank you.
Well,
All right, so I withdraw the motion, move to executive session. Let's continue this conversation about the waterfront zoning. Does anybody have any other comments on that? What do we want to do?
I can't make it, I'm not sure, a lot of the terms that have been kind of floated around in terms of the waterfront amendment, I do need to just kind of wrap my head around, so I'm not ready to make a decision on that, because I'm still wrapping my head around.
All right, let me make a suggestion that we do need to talk about an issue that relates to the waterfront zoning in executive session.
Okay.
So why don't we talk about, because there is an issue relating to potential litigation. So we'll discuss that issue in executive session, and then that might lead us to some further discussion later in the public part of the meeting, or next week or next meeting. Anything else on that? Are you good with that?
Yep.
Okay. All right, that's it for any other new business? All right, mayor and trustee reports. Does anybody have anything they would like to report?
On Tuesday, I volunteered for Meals on Wheels, and Eric is the new volunteer coordinator. I think we were all kind of notified about that. And so I delivered meals in Nyack and Upper Nyack, and I really enjoyed it. I'm really happy to see that a lot of our elderly people are still at home and doing well. And I think they were really happy just for the interactions. I thought it was a really good program, and I'm certainly gonna do more of it. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, very nice.
At the night time?
But, I will be doing a cleanup it's not in Nyack, but it is the beginning of, our environmental month. I know Earth Day is in April, so there will be cleanups around the district, around the village. I'm doing one on Saturday with, folks in the Orchard Democratic Committee, so, come out. For that.
Anybody else? Yeah.
No.
I would just make a note that we are opening up applications for Nyack tourism grants, which are funded by the hotel tax. We've so far given out about $62,000 in the first year. We will have probably more than that to give out this year. We're soliciting applications starting next week. Application process will be open to mid-May. It's not just events. It could be anything that relates to tourism. you can apply for a grant. In mid-May, the Business Council will review them and then give us the opportunity to then vote on them sometime in June, probably at our last meeting in June. And those will be for things that will probably take place in the last half of the year. And we're going to start to get into a schedule that we vote on these in June and December for the next 6 months of the projects that are going on. Ken?
Question, do you need to be a 501c3? I don't know why I never asked
No,
that.
you can be in, we've given out to individuals,
Okay.
yeah, to anybody. I mean, people can just apply as a private citizen and say, I want to do this, and if it's a good project, we would approve it. All right.
Communications.
Communications, anything on communications that we haven't talked about? Nothing? All right, we're up to public comment, any topic, 1 minute max. We won't take names, but you can come up and, but this one does say 1 minute max. And we didn't enforce that.
Mr. Mayor and village trustees, my name is Rabbi Chaim Tzvi Ehrenreich. I'm a resident of Upper Nyack, and I work in the village of Nyack. I personally think it's senseless for our lovely small village in suburban New York with a population of 7,000 to consider getting involved in an international affair that is way beyond its control and purview. I don't believe that that's what the electorate elected you to get involved with. Additionally, within the proposed ceasefire text, which I had a copy in the car, there are a number of misleading statements, opinions, innuendos, exaggerations, and outright lies. And I'll draw your attention to one of them. It mentions that 2 million people are at risk if a ceasefire is not achieved. Well, it fails to mention the risk of a premature ceasefire in place before Israel finishes its job of destroying Hamas. My children's adoptive grandparents remain at risk in Jerusalem if Hamas remains in power. The lives of Israel's entire population of 9.5 million people, consisting of Jews, Arabs, Christians, and Muslims, are all at risk if the ceasefire you are being asked to call for comes to be. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
Thank you.
If you want to do public comment, just line up. Please come up.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and trustees. My name is Warren Gould. I'm a resident and voter in the village of Nyack. I've spent my entire life in the Nyacks. I was coming this evening merely to sit, but in listening to a couple of the comments earlier this evening, just as I came in, I need to mention a couple of things from my opinion. First, the irritations of litter, dog waste, and motor vehicle violations. I have those same items. I can't get rid of the people crapping, in front of my home with their dogs and not picking up. I picked up more than a lot of other people. But if you add no right turn signs at Midland and High and Midland and Main, I'm sure you will get fewer people going through the red light at those locations which have signs, no right turn on red, that too many people ignore. And since I live within sight distance of both those locations, I'm mentioning that to you. But I've heard this evening, 30,000 people dead. There is a Wharton mathematician who has come out on various news programs and periodicals indicating that that is a mathematical impossibility. I just mentioned that. I would also, I don't know if my minute is almost up.
It is.
But I would not expect my village board to make decisions without becoming academically versed in diplomacy, international relations, and a variety of items like that. So you have the depth of what is happening. No one was calling genocide when we bombed Dresden, Berlin, Nagasaki, and Hiroshima. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Anybody else?
I just really don't understand how it is so Mara, MARAH, how it's so easy for you to go on Facebook, become a finger warrior and talk about how you support Israel, but 30,000 people are dead. At least the people in Israel had the opportunity to go home, the hostages. But none of these Palestinians in Gaza, 32,000, 12,000 being children, none of them had the capacity to go home. Yet we're still playing hokey pokey here. I just don't get it. And all these testimonies about Hamas, I really just don't understand. And I guess that's all I have to say, because I didn't really prepare anything. Thank you.
Thank you. Else?
So at a board meeting in February, we were told that this is a very volatile issue. We don't think it's up to the Village of Nyack, the Board of Trustees to weigh in on it. I'm concerned that what's lacking here, that we have community members who are suffering, who are scared and have not been publicly supported by you. I think that that is furthering a seemingly volatile situation here in Nyack. And I would suggest that this meeting tonight is perhaps evidence of that. I have been on the receiving end of anti-Semitism throughout my life, but I want the board to know that the only reason that I personally feel unsafe here in town right now is because my community members feel unsafe. I don't feel that we as a town are successfully upholding our claims to be a community that prides itself on diversity and in which we deeply love all of our neighbors. Honestly, I was initially shocked by the anger that going out and supporting our Palestinian brothers and sisters seems to stir, and the displays of this anger, which honestly have been so scary in ways that I want to thank Marianne for what she bravely recounted to you. I used to be shocked, but now I expect it and I fear it. And this is damaging to our community, and I hope that you can see and hear that you have underrepresented community members who need your support. So look, we're in here together tonight as Nyack community members, and I want to address the board, but I'm distracted by people and their disrespectful behavior, and you invite me to ignore them and just not pay attention to them and to focus in on you, which I gladly do. But in this little room, you can tell me don't listen to them, you can tell me don't pay attention to them, but what should I do? What should we do? What should your Nyack residents, what do we do out there? You have community members who do not feel safe. What can the board offer? If you cannot weigh in on matters abroad, can you please weigh in on this?
Thank you.
That's not right.
Anybody else?
That's nobody's you.
Anybody else?
You don't have to respond to
No.
her concern.
Why,
No,
why don't you have to
I
respond?
don't understand that.
Because. Is there a reason? I don't know.
I engaged with someone earlier tonight who had said that she felt that we had not spoken out against Islamophobia
The
and
resolution states that, it calls out one.
the resolution that, all right, I'm not, this is why, because we're not here to have a debate.
I understand.
The people want to make public comment, that's their public comment. They've been heard.
Okay, I understand.
The fact that we haven't responded does not mean they haven't been heard. They've been heard, and that's it. Public comment's over.
I just have one question before.
Okay?
the night ends. Is it true that you, posted that something on Facebook? Is that true?
The answer to that is very complicated.
Is
and
it true?
I posted many things on Facebook.
Well, is that true?
What she said tonight.
Can you just say that? Is it true or not?
It is true that I posted something on Facebook. I
And
posted
what-
things as an individual. I posted some things. I don't generally post officially as the mayor on Facebook, but here's the point. We are not taking up the resolution. We are not taking up a resolution to call for a ceasefire. We're also not taking up a resolution to make an opinion on any of the other issues related to that war or to Darfur or to what's going on in other parts of the country, other parts of the world. We don't take those public policy stances. If you want to say that we're being inconsistent, that's fine. You can say we're hypocrites, that's fine. You
But
can
it's
say
not
whatever you
true.
want to
It's not
say.
true because you're not
I'm-
saying whether or
I'm-
not you did. I don't know. I'll have to.
I answer your question. I'm not here to debate
You're
with
not
you.
letting me
I'm asking,
finish.
I let you finish. I let you ask,
No,
unless you
you
spoke
were-
for much longer than public comment.
Because you're mayor, you get the right to talk over me.
I'm the mayor in a village board meeting, which I run. So I'm not talking, I'm not having a conversation with you.
I'm asking you. to-
I'm not having a conversation with
Right,
you.
okay.
All right, are we have anything else? Any other public comment? No, seeing no other public comment, can I get a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor of going to executive session? All right, I'm gonna let everybody know we will not conduct any business after the executive session. We will be adjourning the meeting in Clifford Watley's memory, who was an employee at our DPW. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you very much. There used to be the village board would meet with a police officer in prison.
That's my love.
Yeah, we don't think that we have a need for that.
You've offered several times to discuss.
Feel free to reach out to me on Facebook.
I don't want to reach out to you on Facebook. I'm not active on Facebook.
You want to reach out to me on email? Reach out to me on email.
I'm not going to say what I'm going to say. to you.
We have to go into executive.
I completely understand. This happened last time. Many of the.
You want to stay in the executive session, take 15 minutes.
I would like to speak for 10 minutes.
10 seconds, fine.
You have said that you are willing to have conversations to discuss your personal stance. I really don't know how to speak you up.
Well, I was saying. Yeah, it's fine.
Barbara, tell me.
You can email me, set up a meeting. I mean, I just don't- I'd be happy to. And you know how to find my.
All right, I don't, but I'm assuming.
Joe Rand, it's Joe, yeah, it's Joe Rand at nyack-newyork.gov.